you'll please join me standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I move over to our town manager comments, I just wanted to mention that there has been some questions about Pennsylvania Avenue being refinished. As you all know, it was closed after Tropical Storm Chantal, and the asphalt that's on there right now is temporary. They just wanted to get the road reopened. The contract to finish it has been let and should be complete in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So it will look nicer, but thank you for your patience while we get it finished. Well, NCDOT gets it finished. All right, Mr. Parsons.
Thank you, Mayor Clement. Good evening, council members, members of the public. Before I move to the agenda, I will note that if anyone saw a notice in the newspaper regarding council's intent to lease 125 Southeast Broad Street, the current administration offices, to First Bank, that is not on the agenda this evening. First Bank has in fact located a different building to relocate to. So despite that legally required notice, we will be taking, or council will be requested to take no further action relative to the potential lease of that facility. That is an item I'm sure we will take up at a future meeting regarding the disposition of that structure and what direction we'd like to go with it. So that being stated, relative to your agenda this evening, your consent agenda includes the finalization of the T-Mobile antenna lease amendment. This is the same amendment that we talked about at work session back in August. This is just the finalization of that. We've gone through the legal steps to be able to finalize that extension. The next one is the authorizing myself, working with the finance director to enter into an installment finance agreement with First Bank not to exceed $7 million as approved by the Local Government Commission of North Carolina in a meeting last Tuesday. So that will be the next step in our process of acquiring the new town hall. A series of meeting minutes, and then finally, simply a resolution adopting a contract accepting funds from the North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program. Those are in the amount of $30,000. They will use to replace various radar equipment, some software that supports those efforts, and then also some additional training for the officers. So again, that's in the amount of $30,000, no matching funds necessary on that. It's a direct grant from the state. Beyond that, we will have staff commentary relative to your public hearings and evidentiary hearings when we get to that point of the agenda, in addition to briefly discussing the requested action item under 8A relative to an intersection review by NCDOT. With that, I'll certainly take any questions or simply ask for an adoption of the agenda as presented.
Okay, council, are there questions?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to public comments, we had no one sign up. If there is anyone in the public who would like to speak, it's a 3-minute opportunity for general public comment. When we get into our public hearings, there will be opportunity at that point to speak about the Clark Street Townhomes or the Veterans Guard preliminary development plan. Is there any general public comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move along. To our consent agenda. Council, do you have any questions on the consent agenda or a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to our first public hearing. Just a reminder, last month we held a little bit closer to the rules of procedure for our council meeting. I will ask that we'll do the same thing. I think it helped get through our hearings in a little bit more of a timely manner, but also more organized. So if we'll have our staff begin the presentation and then the applicant, and then we'll have the public speak and questions for council, or opportunity for council to ask questions after each of those things. All right, for staff, who do we have presenting for Clark Street Townhomes, the rezoning portion? Mr. Broadwell, good evening.
Good evening. James Broadwell from the Planning Department. Hope you all are well. And yes, I'll present first the Clark Street Townhomes conditional rezoning, which is, thank you. It does, perfect. Which is followed by a major subdivision preliminary plat, should you all choose to approve this application. The project is for, to rezone from residential multifamily 2, or RM2 to RM1 CD, to construct 16 townhomes on their own individual lots with a common area lot. It's located, off of Clark Street right there, which is about 3/4 of a mile east of downtown. And with this one, I'm going to get right to the point. The planning board voted to recommend denial of this application, primarily citing density concerns and a couple of site design and safety concerns as well. And us here in planning staff fully respect the call they made with that. And we also fully recognize that as one, I guess that was you, one more. As one drives down Clark Street and you see single-family detached housing, you come across townhomes, that's a pretty marked change. You also come across general business, which is kind of strange. But it's pretty marked change. And that definitely makes sense as a concern. But when we as staff look at the comp plan, as projects come in, it calls for a market change, especially when you're looking at missing middle housing, especially for sale missing middle housing. And with the caveat that it's done with the right character, it's done in the right places, and it controls other elements of the comp plan that we care about, like tree protection, for instance. It also, if you wouldn't mind, it calls for infill development, which means using sites in an efficient way that are near our utilities, that are near our core areas of town, and often involve knocking down older buildings to use them for something new. This project does all of those things. And I'll take a brief aside for a minute. RM2 zoning, which this property is, with the density calculation comes out to be, given the site's 1.5 acres, is 11 units. You may recall this time last year that the applicant submitted a major subdivision for 8 units, townhomes on this site, which you all approved. However, after they got into the site plan process and the numbers started running, just because of the cost of demolishing that building and then the calculation of the density, it wasn't going to work. And so now that's why you're looking at this application, which is for 16 units, which again, 5 more than the by right via major subdivision of 11. So you've got 16 units now. You've got a private drive that cuts through to Midlothian. This location is less than 3/4 of a mile from our downtown core area. It is infill development. It also, the applicant has voluntarily offered architectural renderings with a condition associated with that. That's something you wouldn't get with a major subdivision QJ process. With tree protection, last time, if you recall, the condition just was associated with the trees on the front along Clark Street. And this time we have far more around the whole perimeter of the property. Also something you wouldn't necessarily get with a major subdivision. The setback adjustments, and as well as the parking, those are things that are unique to a CZD that allows for a much more efficient use of the site and actually more trees being saved as well. And last thing I'll add, following planning board, is that the applicant met their neighborhood meeting, met with some of the neighbors, and since then has made an adjustment by adding an emergency access gate on that north side, so that only emergency vehicles can enter to and fro that side. All your routine traffic is off Clark Street. So for all those reasons, staff, we're maintaining our recommendation of approval. The comp plan calls for change, and change is going to happen. And we do feel that getting ahead of that, keeping it Southern Pinesy, and affecting change the way that we want to see it is really important. And when it comes down to it, when you look at the comp plan, this is what it envisioned. And it's in the right area, it does the right design, and it controls for a lot of other those key elements. So with that, unless you all have any questions from here, I'll just go through some of the most important points of the conditions before I wrap up. I mentioned those setbacks. Those really mainly pertain to those buildings in the middle, as far as making sure that they can align well next to each other. There are those dimensions on the side. And those units in the middle, they will have attached garages. If you go to the next one. And the renderings will look like this. And if you recall from a project a couple months ago, Hale Street Cottages, in that meeting, we crafted and sort of amended a condition so that that architecture, it was forgiving enough so you can make minor adjustments, but strong enough that it's going to turn out nice like that. And that is on the next slide, exact same wording with this project. And the units on the north and south side will not have the attached garages. They're going to have their parking accomplished on that eastern side, right next to the buffer. They will have the slightly different renderings. Same condition applies, though. Generally follow, but with the caveats of everything that's listed below that. Okay. One oddity with this project, which struck us a little strange at first, there's two site plans. So you've got your surface parking and then your garage options site plan. And there's kind of a side-by-side. At first, we had a slight issue with this. The garage option involved taking out more trees, a little more cumbersome in space. The applicant did adjust, so the overall impact, aside from a very minute increase in impervious surface, is exactly the same. So for that reason, staff don't find an issue leaving that option available. All right. As I mentioned, in late September, it was only a couple weeks ago, applicant did a neighborhood meeting to try to address some of the concerns that came out of planning board, and that was the adjustment made so that it's called a Knox box, so that only emergency vehicles with sirens engaged can enter that way. And part of the reason for the cut through at all, the main reason, is for emergency and fire access, so that they have the ability to move around internally and get their fire hose within 150 feet of any facade of the building. All right. You all have seen this one before. It's the tree preservation condition, which says, essentially, if it doesn't have to go, it won't go. The applicant's already shown on the perimeter of the property all the trees that are marked for saving. And certainly when it gets to the minutia of site plan review, that's just what we did last time with this application and preserving those trees in the front. And the same will apply here as well, should you all choose to approve. And then just a couple final notes. Stormwater will be achieved a bit more creatively with bioswales, cisterns, and a couple of small ponds. Regardless, they have to meet the town's pre-post requirements, and that will, again, be reviewed in depth during site plan review to make sure that happens. Watershed protection permit, I didn't mention this yet. With their application last year, the watershed protection permit was given to that parcel. It still runs with the parcel, so therefore it's not needed with this application. And then lastly, the varying buffer width, that was actually a suggestion that we made as staff. If you'll notice, for the parking, if it stayed outside of the buffer, it would have to shift south, taking out more trees. And so by dipping into the buffer slightly and making it wider in other places, you still get the same planting rate, but more trees saved. So that's the reasoning behind that one. I won't belabor my point any farther, but for all these reasons, and especially for the applicant meeting with the neighbors and making some changes based on their comments, we really recommend approval. That really does fall well in line with the comp plan for those reasons. Yeah. Staff approve. All right.
All right, council, I know we all have questions. I'll start from the end. Ms. Peterson, do you have questions?
Are you able to, can you please delineate the concerns of the planning board and whether or not you think their concerns have been addressed by stipulations that you all have agreed to? You've mentioned a couple of them. Can you walk me through, can you delineate that and walk me through that?
The density concerns obviously are not. The unit count is still the same. But as you look at the comp plan, it is what's called for, as long as it's done in the right way. As far as the emergency access and then and coming in off of Midlothian, yes, absolutely. I mean, routine traffic's not going to be coming off of there. There's a hill, as if you make a left out of there, it's pretty steep. And there was safety concerns about routine traffic coming in and out of there and that causing possible accidents. Obviously, if you can't turn out there, then that's no longer a concern.
Okay, so the three concerns were density, which density is just going to be something about which people agree to disagree, right? The emergency exit, which has been agreed to, right? And then the safety concerns on the exit. Tell me one more time what your response was there.
By putting the emergency access only gate, the routine traffic cannot ingress and egress from that route.
Okay.
So the odds of there being accidents or hitting a pedestrian and so forth, that's pretty well mitigated.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Goodman?
So that was actually a question I was going to ask. Mentioned that there were 4 issues with the planning board. The access on the Midlothian, unsafe conditions there. Applicant and staff feel like that's been mitigated by the addition of the emergency access only. Check. The other one is just the higher density. And then there was another one that noted traffic impacts as a concern. And finally, insufficient stormwater. That was one of are those the 4 concerns that came out of planning board?
Yes, and the stormwater concern, I mean, the bottom line is they have to meet their pre-post requirements.
I agree.
And that's going to happen during site plan review, for sure.
Sorry, can you repeat that? The bottom line is they have to what?
Meet the pre-post requirements, so that means whatever the runoff is today has to be mitigated to the exact same level post the project being completed.
And I may have misunderstood you, but I noted it here because I was writing something else down. But did you allude to that there's more trees retained in this plan than the previous plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'll ask the applicant probably more to quantify on that. And then the current zoning, at the base zoning that it currently is allows for 11 units. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's calculated based on how much acreage you have and then what's called for in the zoning and the UDO, which would come out to 11, yeah.
Mr. Payton?
Some comments, but I'll wait till after the applicant presents.
Okay. Ms. Gray, do you have anything for staff?
I was just wondering whether or not there were any other concerns from the residents in the area. I know you said the emergency, forgive me for not knowing the verbiage here, the emergency spot where emergency vehicles can come and go was one thing that they were concerned about. Was there anything else that they were concerned about that at the end of the discussion?
I'm not sure exactly how the neighborhood meeting went in September, if that's what you are referring to, but I think the Midlothian access, there was 2 concerns, there. It's safety and then traffic coming in and off of that road. That gate addresses both of those for the most part. Stormwater, I mean, it's a much more creative design that they're going to use. And we actually, as staff, appreciate that instead of having previously what was a giant crater of a stormwater pond. So creativity is good there. But at the end of the day, they have to meet that requirement.
Mr. Goodman, you had another question?
Yeah, Planner Broadwell, the access to Midlothian that the planning board saw was a full access onto Midlothian. That's
Yes.
correct? Okay, and now it's just an access with a gate by emergency first responders
Yes, sir.
only, not through. Okay, thanks.
And my follow-up question has to do with the stormwater. So as I understand it, we put into place stormwater restrictions as people are building, but there is no monitoring of that after the fact. Once it's built, we don't have a responsibility to monitor that. Is that correct?
Out the gate, no. If there is a complaint, and if there's a complaint that falls into our statutory ability to regulate, which is pretty limited to my
Very
knowledge.
limited, yeah.
But as far as the ability to come out and police it without a complaint,
Right.
that's generally not how we would run business.
But Mr. Grieve is reaching for that microphone.
I'll let him jump in.
I believe that the way our program works is that we do review to make sure it meets the requirements for stormwater management. And ultimately, if that system fails to meet those standards, then it is referred to the state for further investigation and administration.
So we have no local control over that. That would just be a referral to the state. Can you, Mr. Reeve, can you give me an idea of how many times the state has intervened, if any, in Moore County stormwater concerns in the last 2 years?
Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that one, no.
Do you anticipate that it is more than zero?
I would not, any number I give you would be entirely speculative, so I don't wish to.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
I do know that our engineering department takes calls regularly, does field visits regularly, and interacts with their cohorts at the state and locally and tries to mitigate, resolve, comply, and pursue fixing of the most egregious problems within Southern Pines. I know that's a constant bit of work they do. Working in proximity, I know it's a constant thing they're working on.
Can you name with specificity any issue, any time that's taken place in the last 6 months?
I think we probably want to stick the questions to things that are specific
Excuse me
to
one
this.
second. I think this is important as far as
Is it specific to this application?
it is, as far as what to expect, what the expectations would be as far as regulation of stormwater.
I don't wish to respond to that in terms of other projects. I just know that because our team works in close proximity to their team, and we interact on a regular basis about statements in the UDO, we confer on many projects in various stages. I know they're very involved with that task.
Thank you. Mr. Broadwell, I actually had a question. In the report, it says that the planning board decided that the conditional zoning district is inconsistent with the 2040 comprehensive plan under their criteria under UDO 2.17.9 for the reasons set forth in attachment 1 of the staff report Z-05-25. Is that staff report also in this packet?
It should be. Or it's the same one.
Same
yeah.
staff report, okay. I guess I'm trying to understand the inconsistency that they're finding. Okay. Okay, I think that's all.
Inconsistency with the comp plan.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's specifically. Okay, I think,
Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to move on to the applicant.
Oh, I was just going to say, the only change, as far as the zoning goes, the only change provided by changing the zoning is we go from 11 to 16 units, correct?
Yes, to change from RM2 to RM1 with added conditions, of course, would allow for that increase in density. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Do you have something
I
else?
guess I'll wait. It was sort of related to that, but I'll let just in case something that the applicants.
Thank you. If we can have the applicant come up to do their portion of the presentation.
Good evening, council members, town staff, Mr. Manager, Mayor. My name is Trevor Hansen with V3 Southeast, formerly Coons Jones Design. Been working for Coons Jones, or V3 now for 5 years, since 2020. From Utah, graduated with a degree in landscape architecture from Utah State University. I'll kind of speed through. I think everyone's familiar with the site, so we'll kind of speed through these first few slides. That's the location of the site along Clark Street with Midlothian on the north side. Next slide. Currently zoned RM2. We did go through a preliminary plat last year. And as discussed earlier, maybe go a couple more slides on. Well, this first talks, I want to talk about the existing site. So as you can see from the existing site, this kind of gives a good picture of what's currently on the site. So the middle of the property is cleared out. There's an existing building that's been abandoned on site and also a gravel pad in front of that. And then surrounding the site is some mature vegetation surrounding the site along its perimeters. Next slide, please. So discussion items I had today is wanted to go through the comprehensive plan, talk about how our plan relates to that, Also talk about the proposed redesign, why we're redesigning it, and why that kind of came about. And then also talk about the tree comparison. We have some side-by-side images so you can see the exact number and difference between trees that were saved on this new plan versus the old plan that was approved last year. Also talk about why we're doing a conditional zoning district, go over the proposed site plan in a little bit more detail, answer any questions you have, and then talk about how we address the planning board's concerns and concerns of the residents. And then kind of give a brief rundown of the neighborhood meeting and what came out of that. Go ahead. Here is the project site circled in blue, noted in the comprehensive plan as areas to enhance. Next slide. Also categorized as neighborhood within the comprehensive plan. Next slide. It's categorized as a suburban settlement character district in the comprehensive plan. Next slide. So a big part of the comprehensive plan, as you well know, is providing missing middle housing options. And these are housing options that reduce the footprint, provide different options on how to offer these to potential home buyers, townhomes, multifamily, fourplexes, options that are different than the typical single-family detached homes. In our plan, in our proposed plan, we are proposing townhomes. Would like to make note that the current zoning does allow for this land use type. Next slide, please. Again, within the building matrix, these are the housing types that are allowed within this part of Southern Pines within the comprehensive plan. Again, just talking about the different ways that this plan is addressing this type of building matrix, talking about townhomes, kind of hard to read, close. Provides varying transportation choices, parking provisions, both driveways and parking lots off-street. And it's classified as suburban settlement. So, next slide. This slide talks about how the comprehensive plan calls for densifying. Specifically building up and not out. So with this plan, we're packaging the units close together and all of the townhomes are going to be 2-story. So we are building up. And by doing this and creating a denser plan, we're also able to preserve more open space, which is also what the comprehensive plan calls for. Additionally, with this new plan, the way we've laid it out, the way we've laid out the road that cuts through the site, we were able to save more trees with this plan than the previous plan. And a lot of that has to do with the emergency turnaround in the previous plan. And that's why we wanted to not propose it in this plan, because we knew that it would result in more trees to be cut down, existing trees to be cut down. So, next slide, please. So here is why the proposed redesign. The plan on the left is the previous site plan, which was 8 units. It had one access off of Clark Street with a fire access turnaround, what's called a hammerhead turnaround, which would allow an emergency vehicle to turn around internally within the site and then exit out using the same entrance point back onto Clark Street. In this plan that we had 8 units in total. When we got into site plan submittal, and then we started to run the numbers on construction costs, coming up with construction budget, it just simply wasn't feasible. We weren't able to balance the cost of the construction to do that turnaround with the number of units that we were proposing and that they were trying to sell. We would have had to do either of two things. We would have had to raise the price of the homes, or we would have had to sacrifice the quality of the housing itself. Both are things that our client and the developer did not feel comfortable in doing personally, and they didn't think it aligned with the goals of the town, the goals of the comprehensive plan to provide attainable housing and more housing options, but that were still within the quality that the town desired. So because of this, we are proposing the updated site plan and the conditional zoning to a CZ D RM1. This will allow us to do 5 additional units, more than the previous zoning allowed, 8 additional units more than the original plan, so 16 units in total. And what this will allow is it will, click that one. So on again, okay. This will allow the project to be a feasible project where we will be able to keep the housing prices within a reasonable range and then not sacrifice on the quality of the construction. Next slide. So this is a plan of side-by-side plan showing the trees that are to be saved and the trees that are to be removed on both plans. So the trees that are to be saved are marked with green dots, and the trees that are to be removed are noted with red X's. Plan on the left is the previous site plan approved last year, and the new proposed site plan is on the right. Don't know about exact quantities, but you can tell it's significant. All the trees in the previous plan, a majority of the trees along the western boundary were removed due to that hammerhead turnaround. With us flipping the drive on the other side and then cutting through all the way to Midlothian with no turnaround, we were able to save a lot of trees. And then additionally, we worked with the town to adjust the parking spaces on the right side of the plan to be able to accommodate existing trees and then provide that varying buffer. Again, kind of running down why we're proposing it. Currently, it's zoned as RM2. We're proposing a conditional zoning which ties our rezoning to this specific site plan that we are presenting today and that we've submitted. It allows up to 10 to 12 units per acre. I believe 16 is about 10 and a half per acre. And also, we believe this will allow us to provide missing middle housing opportunities. Because that previous plan wasn't feasible, we were contemplating scrapping that plan entirely and doing just single-family detached, which wouldn't provide these missing middle housing options, which we want to provide. In addition, we have proposed conditions that I have further into the presentation that we can go over them if one by one. These provide unique standards that we have to adhere to and agree to in the rezoning, and they will apply to the final site plan that we submit if approved. In addition, we worked very closely with the town staff to develop these standards. There's a bit of overlap from the previous project that we had submitted and approved on Hale Street. We took a lot of those conditions that we worked out during that process and applied those same exact conditions to this project as well. Kind of overview of the proposed site plan. So firstly is the cut-through road. This is a private driveway meant only for residents of the community, accessing off of Clark Street. The road would cut all the way through to Midlothian, but as described and explained earlier, we have added an emergency access only gate. So residents, other people driving through the community would have no ability to cross that gate and get onto it. It's a Knox box that only a emergency vehicle has access to trigger to lift the gate. So there would be no ability for any cars outside of emergency vehicles to get through that gate. As described by Mr. Broadwell, we have two different type of townhomes. The townhomes in the middle, lots 5 through 11, are townhomes with a garage attached to the unit, where you drive in and access that garage via driveways that connect onto the community driveway running north-south. Lots 12 through 16 and 1 through 4 are the townhomes that don't have garages attached to them. We have two different site plans as discussed. This is the surface-only parking plan, where there would be parking spots on the east side of the drive. In the other plan, we proposed garages. The reason we proposed the two different options is this would allow us some flexibility to meet market demands. We're not exactly sure on whether garages would be a selling point, but we wanted to have that little bit of flexibility to be able to make that decision once we submit for site plan.
I have a question for you on that
Yeah.
slide. You had before said 2-story. This is 2 to 3. I don't think there's any 3-story dwelling units on Clark Street or Midlothian, which would be out of character.
I apologize, that is a typo. They are 2-story.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. In green is the open space buffers. Those would be HOA owned and maintained. And then you can see the little label with the arrow at the very north of the project site. That's where the emergency access gate would be, right after the trash receptacles that are located up there. Next slide, please. Oh, go back, I'm sorry, that's the alternate option. So this is the option showing the garages. So this has, what it is it's a combination garage and surface parking option. So lots 12 through 16 and 1 through 4 would have access to one surface parking space, and then a single car garage in this option. Circulation and connections, so there's 2 access points. The northern access point is for emergency-only vehicles. All other vehicles would have to access to the main entrance. The pink is the main circulation spine, and circled in yellow is that emergency access gate. Next slide, please. So I wanted to go over the planning board's concerns, as noted in the planning board meeting in August. So the first concern that they had was safety. How we address that is by adding this emergency-only access gate. This prevents any cars or any routine traffic to go out onto Midlothian, so you wouldn't have that concern. The second one would be traffic. They were concerned about traffic coming onto Midlothian. It's a little bit more narrow road. It's steeper in a section of it to the north, to the west of the site. And again, we address that concern adding the emergency access gate. And then they are also concerned about the proposed density. In the meeting, in the planning board meeting, all the residents that came out, I believe, were residents who lived along Midlothian. And that's where all the concerns were coming from, is that traffic onto Midlothian. Again, the access to Midlothian is the third one. We've addressed that one. The fourth one was stormwater. As described by Mr. Broadwell earlier, our site plan and all our proposed, the proposed project will have to meet all stormwater requirements. They were worried, residents were worried about the drainage from the road coming into the site. if you actually flip back to the site plan, you can see some of the contours, and I could show it to you. Maybe the next slide that has the circulation. Farther, there you go. So as you read the contours here, the slope kind of goes that direction. So water from the road is going that direction. There is an existing ridge between the road and the site. So with drainage, there's no actual way for the water from the road to get onto the site. So we don't have to worry about any of the water from the road for this project. And then everything on the project is being handled by stormwater as discussed. So, with stormwater retention here and on these corners of the site. Another concern they had was increased density. Again, we feel that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan because the comprehensive plan is calling for missing middle housing options, more density, understanding that additional choices and alternative choices for homes for people to buy is something the comprehensive plan is calling for. So we feel that our plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan because of that. And then another concern is that the density is not in character and consistency in the neighborhood. Again, the comprehensive plan is calling for that. And specific to this particular project, because we've been able to save so many trees on the project with this new site plan, we believe that it's going to kind of create a little enclave where you're not going to be able to see directly into the site. We're going to maintain that existing vegetation. Additionally, and I'll kind of outline it a little bit in the next slide when talking about the neighborhood meeting, the developer and builder, Travis, he talked with the residents and let them know that we can keep the character along Midlothian Drive. There's a pretty significant right-of-way between our project site and Midlothian, and that he had talked with the residents and told them that he wouldn't disturb that character and that he would maintain all of that vegetation and keep it in place so that residents wouldn't be able to look directly into the site and see what's in there. And then in addition to that, if you kind of look at how the driveway turns into the site, it kind of comes out and then it turns in at an angle. And there's if you're on the street, you can't look directly into the site off the drive because of that curve back to Midlothian. Next slide, please. So in the neighborhood meeting, coming out of the planning board meeting, we wanted to address the concerns of all the residents. So we decided we would want to invite residents of Midlothian and the surrounding neighborhood to come out, give us feedback on the site plan so that we could come up with a solution that they thought would address those concerns. Coming out of that neighborhood meeting, there were the concerns that came out of that meeting were safety, obviously, with traffic onto Midlothian, concerns about stormwater and flooding issues, and then also concerns about the visual impact and the buffer and being able to see into the development from Midlothian. How our site plan and conditions address these concerns. The safety concerns were addressed again with the emergency access only gate. When it comes to the stormwater and flooding issues, we explained to them that we would have to build stormwater structures that meet the town's requirements and deal with all the pre-post stormwater runoff on our site. And then as it relates to the landscape buffer, we let them know, we kind of showed them and laid the plan out so they could see how many trees we were saving, showed how many trees we were saving along that northern boundary, and then also let them know that the condition that we applied for has very strict standards and requirements that we have to follow, which is beyond what the preliminary plat would have required us to do. Next slide, please. Again, in addition to these other requirements we had, as mentioned, we have requirements as it relates to the architecture. I'd be happy to answer any questions you had about this. It's a very similar condition that we wrote on the Hill Street project that would require us to have some variation to some of the units to create a unique character for each unit. If you guys have any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer it.
Is the reference to a three-story building another typo? Because it's right there again. On your slide that you've created.
I'm sorry, yeah, I don't believe the condition is calling for 3 stories. I think this is a typo in the presentation, but the condition doesn't reference
So
that.
that's the second one. This is a consistent typo throughout the process.
Yeah, I apologize about that. So, but it is, they are 2 stories, so. It is 2 stories, yes.
All right, well, rather than correcting your grammar or your typos, can we move on to some questions from the council? Because I think
Sure.
what you've gone through so far, I'm pretty sure we're going to have a lot of questions.
Yep,
And then make sure we provide time for the public to speak as well.
okay.
All right, Ms. Peterson, would you like to start on the questions?
So you said there was a meeting in August with the landowners, the surrounding landowners, correct?
No, it was in September.
In September. So there was an additional meeting with the proposed change. You did a second neighborhood meeting, is that correct? Or was there
No,
just one?
so conditional zoning does not require a neighborhood meeting.
Right.
So in response to all the people that came out and addressed their concerns during the planning board, we
Right.
decided to hold a voluntary neighborhood
Okay.
meeting in September.
And that was in September?
Yes,
And that was with the proposed changes at that time, with the 16 units, correct?
yes, with the proposed changes, yes.
Okay.
So this is changes that they had seen in the planning board meeting, yes.
And you indicated that the 8 units that you originally proposed were not feasible because you would sacrifice quality and also would raise the price on the buildings, correct?
No, it wasn't, we would have been faced with a decision either to raise the price significantly, sacrifice on quality, or not do the project altogether.
Okay, and this is, and so we've gone from 8 to 16, we have doubled your original proposal, correct?
Correct. Because that's the way that, to do that many units is how we make it feasible financially. To be
And
able
yet-
to be able to build the project, do the project, develop it, and build the homes, and be able to sell it at a price that we'll be able to sell. Yes.
Right, you indicated the prices would be in a reasonable range. Can you define that?
I don't know the exact number. Again, it's reliant on what the market demands. So.
Ms. Peterson?
No, I understand. I thought since he had kind of opened the door on that one, I understand what you're going to tell me, that I can't ask about a price.
Yes, ma'am.
But when they open the door and say it's going to be in a reasonable range, I feel like it's justifiable for me to ask what that reasonable, define that. Do you disagree? Because I will yield to whatever you say.
Is there a definition of middle housing in the comprehensive plan?
In terms of a price point?
Then the answer is no.
Okay. That's a pretty bold statement for me to not be able to ask you an amount, so that's fine. The tree slide that shows total number of trees saved under the new plan, can you do the side-by-side slide again on that?
Yeah, if you could go back to that, please.
It looks like about the same number of trees. Can you show me on the screen where you've saved a lot more trees with double the number of units?
So the existing trees are marked in either green dots, which are the ones we're gonna save,
Right.
or red X's, which are gonna be the ones we remove. So in the previous plan, all of these trees here were gonna be removed in the previous plan.
Right.
Due to having to do this particular turnaround.
Right.
So in this plan, all these trees, we are now saving them.
Okay. Okay, and that's the only change, right? By not doing that turnaround.
And bringing it all the way through.
Right.
Because we don't have to do the turnaround.
But you could also bring it all the way through with fewer units, right?
So Mr. Hanson, please return to the microphone just so she can answer the
Right.
question.
Thank
And
you.
Ms. Peterson, can you ask questions that are, I feel like I don't know the questions are actually on the project as much as you're trying to clarify what the picture shows. And I think you can see what the picture shows. I mean, it's
So
obvious.
would the pull-through have been available as an option for 11 units that complied with the current zoning?
It still wouldn't have been a feasible project financially.
It's the question.
Would not
was
have
the-
been a feasible one financially?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Understand. And then you said at one point you also talked about doing single-family detached. How many would have gone into that?
I'm sorry, that's still not on this project. Can we ask questions that are about the project he's
I think
presenting
again,
rather
if
than
that-
the
I think again, if
options?
that is an option that's been brought up and made an issue.
But he's also not proposing that option. I mean, he doesn't have a plan
Well,
for that because
I
it's,
would really like to be able to ask my question.
and I would like for your questions to be germane to the topic. And if they are not, I'm going to interrupt. Otherwise, we'll be here until midnight. Would you like to ask a question that has to do with this project?
Since it was brought up, I'd like to know how many single-family
Goodman, do you have
homes.
questions that are relevant to this project?
We didn't, again, we didn't explore that in great detail. We wanted to create a plan that provided missing middle housing options that was financially feasible, meaning the developer could develop the land, sell the homes, and make a reasonable profit or make any profit at all. The previous plan that we had, he would not have been able to make any money on the project.
With the 8 units, correct? Got it.
Trevor, based on that count, I'm glad you landed on this page, because it looks like you're going to save about 2/3 more trees. Based on the count here, the old plan had 24 trees being removed, the new plan has 8.
Correct.
That was based on my count of just the red X's versus on both plans. So
Yes.
you said, well, okay, you couldn't exactly quantify them, but this sort of does that.
It does. It's just, again, going through a site plan submittal, we didn't want to we have strict standards that we have to follow per the condition. There's only certain things that that allow us to cut down a tree. We have to meet certain, we have to meet a checklist based off the condition. And so the condition provides strict conditions on when we can cut down a tree. And even when we request a tree to be cut down, we have to discuss it with staff. The condition outlines that we have
Okay.
to get approval from them to do that, so.
So are these trees that are marked on both of these plans a
Yes.
6-inch DBH or greater?
Yes, they are.
In all these situations. So it is apples to apples approach that we're comparing here.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And do you know, right off the bat, the distance between, I know there is there's a large right-of-way between Midlothian. So the back, so it'd be the northwest corner is the closest corner of this project to Midlothian. Do you know about what the distance is?
Based off kind of me measuring
Yeah, it's at just
40 to 50 feet, that top,
Yeah,
the northwest corner.
Yeah.
Is closest to Midlothian. It looks like it's about 40 to 50 feet.
Okay.
Approximately.
So if we could go back to the slide where it said how we address the planning board concerns. And this might be a little bit semantics, but number 4,
Keep going, BJ. Right. Oh, no, sorry, forward. The slide about planning board concerns. There we go.
okay, so number 4 on slide 4, I guess, is that statement better if you say it will be addressed? I mean, I guess my ultimate question is, how is it addressed?
Yeah, it will be addressed. Once we do the actual stormwater design.
It may be also, is Tim with you tonight?
No, he's not.
Okay. So I guess your point is, when it gets engineered, the concerns to allay the concerns of stormwater, it will be addressed, but it's not actually addressed now.
No, no.
Okay, because number 4, the way I read it, kind of sounds like it is.
No, it's not currently addressed. We still have to go through, if approved, we still have to go through the process of detailed construction design, which during that process, stormwater issues on our project site will be addressed and meet the requirements of the town.
Okay, and then I think I have 2 more questions. The hearing that we had last year, the 8 units, there was a condition placed on that rezoning. It actually wasn't a rezoning, it was just a subdivision, I guess, right? The applicant agreed to put in a pathway to the rear of the project through to Midlothian.
Yep. So
Is
we
that-
did talk about this. It was brought up by staff.
Well, let me just ask my question first. Do you feel like that's addressed with the emergency road, or is there still a plan? I'm sorry.
That was actually something that we talked about, that the road could be used as pedestrian access. Because it's a private driveway, it's not going to have a lot of vehicular traffic. Residents could now use it, and now that it's an emergency access gate, now residents would be able to use it.
Yeah.
Pedestrians would be able to access that road and walk out onto Midlothian if they needed to get to somewhere, like a neighboring residence along that street.
Yeah, I think that the point is, I think in our comprehensive plan, we're all about some connectivity. And while there's not necessarily connectivity from something to something, it's going to happen at some point in time. So having that added infrastructure in there now would help that in the future. And I think maybe my last question might be a question for you, Mr. Broadwell. Following up on the mayor's question on the planning board statement, that it did not comply with the 2040 comp plan, was that a general statement, or was there specificity to that statement? Like, was there more to it?
More general.
Okay. So you didn't have any, like, this part of the, it's just doesn't comply?
The surrounding neighborhood is somewhat single-family detached. We have GB, we also have a church. And the market change in density is, in some instances, kind of a policy choice. The comprehensive plan does really call for it. And as far as where the cut line is, kind of comes down to policy.
So that,
And
right,
our-
so there was
our
just no
interpretation-
specifics at the planning board of how it doesn't comply with the comprehensive plan? Okay, thank you. That's it, that's all I have. Thank you.
I'll skip myself and I'll try to get through your all's questions, and then what's left of mine, I'll address.
This isn't necessarily a question, it's just some comments that I've been putting together after listening to Planner Broadwell and you as well. You addressed a lot of these things. This is largely, I'm kind of asking Director Grieve and Broadwell if I'm understanding this correctly. So it's going to be a little bit rambling, but I'll try to make it make sense. This is, I try to make sure I'm focusing on what are we being asked to decide, not getting caught in the nuances and the weeds of elements of the project. It's conditional zoning. It's kind of new to us. We've only been doing them roughly a year. We've probably only done 2 or 3 of them so far. My understanding of conditional zoning is that a project wants to take place that would not be allowed by right anyway. And so they want to ask for something that's not allowed. And the conditional zoning process is supposed to be able, can we make it work? And so I look at the give and take by it. And Ann, you said like the only change. So to me, they can't do 16 units. They could do 11. So they're coming to conditional zoning, wanting 16 units. We don't just give away free units. So under the conditional zoning, I'm like, okay, you're asking me to give you 5 more units. So we got to be getting something back. And so in my head, in the analysis of if I like your proposal or not, here's what you're giving back to me if I'm understanding. You are giving us tree protection, which you've shown. That would not happen anyway, because you're not required, if you came in asking for 11 units, you're not required to protect a single tree. And so by going through conditional zoning, we are making you do it, which is what we're gaining. That's a positive. I do like that you're protecting the left side. I do have more sympathy for residential properties that abut a change like this. That's all on the left side, and that's where you are saving more of those trees. So I appreciate that this process would make sure that that happens. The biggest thing, if I understand right, is we would have architectural control through the conditional zoning. So in giving you the 5 units, you're giving us architectural control. We cannot, by state law, control architectural renderings for residential. We can if we do this conditional zoning. And you've promised to make it look a certain way that we wouldn't be guaranteed it would. So that's another thing. We're getting back for exchanging these extra units. And also the setbacks and some of the fluidity of where your buffers will be in line with preserving things. Again, without conditional zoning, by the rigid nature of the rules, necessarily wouldn't happen. One more thing is, I guess, by this project, you have indicated it's going to be purchased and not a rental. And I know in communities like this, that's a big deal. Nobody wants rental units of density in and amongst the neighborhood. But these are going to be private homeowners, and your conditional zoning, that is the product that you're going to be putting into place. So
Just keep in mind, we can't make our decision based on that.
yeah, I got you. So if I'm correct, my job is to weigh what we're getting back that I tried to outline, probably didn't get all of them, but the major ones, in light of what we are allowing that's not currently allowed. And that's sort of the crux of a CD decision. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Those are all the most salient ones for sure.
All right, they cannot be short-term rentals. That would not be allowed in the zoning.
Thank you. I was meaning,
The ownership
yeah.
arrangement is what you're getting at,
Yeah.
but in case it's relevant, they cannot be purchased and used for short-term,
Gotcha.
3-4 day rentals.
Okay.
That would be tourist home, and tourist homes aren't allowed.
I appreciate it. That just helps me make sure that I'm using the right filters and the right analysis for what we've all heard. So I appreciate it. That's all. Thank you.
I appreciate that perspective. I feel like that's a very good summary and keeps us to the point. Ms. Gray?
Yeah, there was one other plus, and forgive me, Planner Grieve, I cannot remember the verbiage that we used for the mid, you don't know what I'm talking about, you're not reading my head.
The missing middle.
Thank you, missing middle, thank you, Planner, yes, missing middle. This definitely hits it. And that was one of the big things on our comp plan. So, and I'm glad that Mr. Goodman asked the question, like, what particular things did the planning board address when they said it was going against the comp plan? It doesn't seem like they really had a specific thing in mind when they said it wasn't going with the comp plan. So I was looking back at some of the things that were mentioned. The higher density issue, really, I think was the only thing that maybe you guys could not really address. The access to Midlothian, that was taken care of. Potentially insufficient stormwater management, that will be taken care of. So I know you said there's like it's a straight through. Are there any other paths for people to drive their cars or whatever?
No, that would be the only one.
That's the only
Is
one
that-
going
is
straight
that-
through.
is
But that's,
that-
I guess that's a wide area.
Foot wide drive, which would be sufficient for emergency access. That's the requirement is 20 feet.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. Reagan, sorry, Mr. Parsons, did you have something you wanted to add?
Mayor, and I only ask for the moment because it happens to be back up there on the slide. Mr. Hanson, and simply this is to kind of set expectations and not create heartburn for staff later on at the site plan review. I noted on a couple of your slides, there's actually water lines already sort of been located on either side of the project. And clearly you've done some previous utility work under the 8-unit subdivision. I'm just wondering whether there's been any preliminary engineering as to the location of bringing those utilities onto the site. And the reason I ask is because we're sitting and counting trees that are green versus red, and one of the, and it's even in the applications, but sort of one of the outs is a need to remove a tree for utility purposes. But I'm wondering how far along that plan has come, if there's already sort of a thought or a preliminary commitment to sort of running those within, I'll call it the right-of-way of the private drive, or sort of what has been done on the engineering side, since this is now kind of a second crack at the same piece of property. And I'm just thinking you might be a little bit further along than the typical application that would be before us right now.
So we haven't gone into detailed design on the service lines coming off the water lines and sewer lines. Most likely the sewer would come down the middle of the road, and then there would be service feeds off of it. But as far as servicing each of these units, we actually, during the original plan that we submitted, we did come up with ideas on how to bundle utilities so
Right.
that we wouldn't create multiple service lines, taking out a whole swath of trees. We'd
Right.
be able to bundle them in concentrated areas and then navigate them around trees. And that's what we would intend to do on the site plan. So, but as far as any like commitment to that today, I can't get into that because again, we need to get through the design. We need to be able to go walk through the design to be able to know what we
Well,
can and
obviously,
can't
once you
do.
get to the center of the property, as you've shown from existing conditions, there aren't really trees there. So it's
Yeah.
really about that stuff around the edge.
Yeah, but and that's the benefit of that cut-through road too, is it allows
Right.
us to take our utilities down that road and it provides that access to be able to do that, so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, a couple questions. When you mentioned the density of, I think you said 10 to 12 acres would be allowed, and I'm not sure what the exact zoning was. Can you repeat what the density would be, like the per acreage density with the 16 units?
10 and a half.
Okay. Yeah. And then do you have any version, like visual image of what this is going to look like from Clark Street or from Midlothian? You said it was about 40 to 50 feet from Midlothian, those units, the 12 through 16?
We don't have a visual with us that shows that.
Do you know if it's the front or the back of them?
Not sure if, I don't know.
The back of the units are closest to.
Okay, yeah, so the back of the units would be Midlothian. So they would be, that part of Midlothian is heavily vegetated even within the right-of-way. So there wouldn't be any views really going into the site to see the back of those homes, so.
Okay. And then
If you actually scroll to the existing photos, you can kind of see what the existing vegetation looks like along Midlothian at the very beginning. Thanks, BJ. Yeah, so that's the existing vegetation, the two slides on the bottom. That's what it looks like from Midlothian looking into the site.
Okay. So
So
that's,
all of those trees there, all that vegetation is within the right-of-way, so we wouldn't be able to even touch that anyways, so,
so it's undisturbed buffer?
yes. Well, it's not a buffer, it's existing vegetation within the right-of-way,
Okay.
not on our project site.
Okay, okay, thank you. And then the last question I had was, the stormwater pond disappeared, but that's because you were addressing the stormwater like during construction, right?
Yeah, and we have kind of outlined conceptual areas of where they would be located. To the interior townhomes, to the west of those, we would, as the slope comes down, we would catch water there
Okay.
for stormwater coming off the buildings. And then we would have some creative solutions for the road itself with stormwater basins, swales, rain gardens, other methods to ensure that we meet the requirements and pick up what's coming off the road.
Okay. And then the other thing I have, it's more of a, I don't want to call it a personal preference, but it's a concern for me if I were looking at these. So I don't know how the lots are numbered, but assuming the top left corner is lot 12, how far are they walking to their parking lot, to their parking spot or their garage? And what are they walking by? So they're going to park over on the right side? And-
There would be a sidewalk.
Okay,
There would be a sidewalk access that they'd be able to access onto the street, so.
yeah, I mean, so when drawn through the lens of what Pro Tem Pate said of, what are we giving up and what are we getting? I have some concern about that. I feel like as a resident, I think it's odd to park that far from your house. I mean, I live on Broad Street. I can't grocery shop in the middle of the day because I have to park around the block. This is like, that family doesn't have, it's not traffic or like parking, it's like they really are never going to be able to park by their house. And that's just a concern that I would have.
Yeah, so these development patterns, they're a little bit outside of the box.
Yeah.
This isn't, I wouldn't call this a cottage court, but it's a little bit like that, where you have some of these situations like that. But to come up with these creative patterns, we have to be able to balance kind of what we're trying to do. And so the orientation of these units is the solution that we came up with, but they would have sidewalk access out onto the private drive, so.
Okay. That is the last of my questions. I know Mr. Goodman said he had another one.
And it's really kind of like a pocket neighborhood.
A little bit, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so back to Manager Parsons' question, specifically about the water and sewer, this may be premature, and I almost guarantee you that it is. But going back to your comment about water and sewer, most likely will go down the main road. It makes sense that it would go down there. Would that water be connected all the way through to Midlothian?
I believe we would have to, we're required to.
Typically, it'd be
connect it, right?
required loop, and it would only
Yeah.
make sense to take it all the way through to Midlothian. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that discussion has taken place or advanced to that point.
And that's betterment of our system too with that.
Yeah, and I want to caution and say typically it would be looped. I'm not sure what conversation has taken place about whether this is a public line coming off of Clark Street, in which case it's going to get looped, or if it just becomes kind of a main service, but
I don't think we've gotten that far into design, so.
and a lot of that may
But
be
the
dependent upon the sizing and the fire requirements and things.
Okay.
service lines, likely, a lot of them would be coming down those roads. So I'm not sure about all of them. Like I said, we haven't gotten that far into design yet, so.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
I have one more question. Are you willing to stipulate,
Ms. Peterson, what would you like to ask?
are you willing to stipulate that in no instance would this be more than a 2-story structure, despite the fact that it says 3 stories twice in your presentation?
I think he's already said that yes.
It's going to be 2-story, so.
Okay, I want that in the notes. Thank you.
I guess if this moves forward, we just need to make sure that we reference the error in the slides that it,
Yeah.
so it's not a point of record in the future that it says 2 and 3.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson.
Okay, thank you.
Such a thorough presentation, thank you.
All right, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this project? You don't need to raise your hand, just come on up to the microphone, introduce yourself, give us your name and address. I think that's it. I can ask before we close.
Anna Haggerty, and I'm a Southern Pines resident, and I just, as a homeowner myself in Southern Pines, I just had a couple of thoughts that came to mind that I wonder if have been considered. Who is the target market? Is it elderly? Is it military? Is it young families? Who is this designed for? Between parking down the street in the heat of summer, I'm just curious who the target market is. How many bedrooms and bathrooms do these include? Are they all the same? Are they smaller, larger? What is the building on the property to the right? That would concern me. Have you considered the impact on emergency services, school zoning, and the possibility of a school bus getting in there? Is it gated? We may not be able to see the housing, but the housing may be accessible to outsiders. When you say middle housing, is that regarding sizing or pricing? And are we allowed to ask about the analytics of the crime rate within townhome areas?
Questions, if you could. Ooh, I didn't keep good notes. while
Ms.
you were giving
Robertson, do we need her address? Okay, sorry. Yes, Anna Haggerty, right? Yes. Okay. All right, is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Good evening, John McInerney, 460 Crest Road. I guess my problem is with the density. Right now, RM2, they can do 11 units. I'd be less concerned if there were other, whether you call them townhouses, apartments, whatever, in that general area. Unless I'm mistaken, on Clark Street, it's nothing but single-family housing. And, because this is on Clark Street, also on Midlothian, and it's basically single-family housing. Now, it's RM. I know that there can be townhouses, apartments, et cetera. So, be that as it may, I just have a problem with going from 11, which they have a right to do without coming to see you guys. Okay, they could do 11 right now. Up to 16. That density just bothers me relative to the neighborhood. Not that there wouldn't be 11. 11's allowed, but 16 bothers me. And I guess for future reference, to the extent that the legislature allows you to do anything, we're talking about in the CD, you can have more tree protection. How about longer term, to the extent that you legally can, how about you put in tree protection
You know we're trying.
standardly?
You know we're trying. You do know that, right? Yeah.
And is this basically the legislature blocking you? Yeah. Well, I hope they wake up someday.
I hope they listen. I hope you all heard that.
The chances of that are nil.
We do reach out, but thank
Okay,
you.
but the density bothers me,
Yeah.
that it's gone from RM2, they can do that now. They had 8, and RM2, I guess I'm not quite sure why they didn't first go around, come in with 11, because they could do 11. But, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Wait, let me just make sure if there's other public comment. Is there anyone else?
Yes, sir. I
Yes,
saw
okay,
your
let's
hand
get through
come
those
on up.
first before we go back to questions.
Johnny Sanderson, 125 Midlothian Drive. I only have one question that, if I'm not mistaken, this ground a while back was used as a dumping ground. Is the town going to be responsible for cleaning that up, or the builders, or would the people buying it know that this has been done before?
So you're saying it's your understanding that this was a dumping ground before?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Will you repeat your name?
I don't know what kind of dumping ground it was. Would I what?
Will you repeat your name one more time? Your name, yes, sir.
I can't hear that well. Johnny Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderson. Okay, so you have a concern that there was a dumping ground here before, and we will address that with the applicant. Was there anything else?
Nope.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. And it looked like we did have other people from the public.
Evening, Council. Joel Carner, 465 East Delaware. I just want to say that there is in the UDO, it is an optional, there's an optional element in there that says that when you're connecting two rights-of-ways, that you allow a path there for pedestrians and bicycle access, not just for the residents, but for the interconnected neighborhoods that Commissioner Goodman was talking about. And so I would request, and I did bring this up in the planning board meeting, but I did not know that there was an additional town or meeting with the residents there. I guess I would like the town council to ask the staff for a few hours to look at that regulation and see. There are other towns out there that have that regulation, that when you connect two rights of way, even with a private drive, that you're going to allow for pedestrian and bicycle access through there. Certainly the pedestrians and the residents will have access through there. And the previous plan did not have that gate on it. And I understand that that's a private drive and what that means. But for the kids who are playing in that area, they're not going to know the difference between a private drive and a private street and a road and a causeway. And they're just going to look at that as, wow, here's a great place to skateboard down. And so I don't want to make our kids be criminal in any way. So I would just ask that the staff ask the planning board to look at that particular thing and see how we can make that less optional and more required for these types of things.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carter. I think we do have more. Yes, come on up.
Emma Davila, 115 Barcroft Court in Troop G. From what I'm seeing, is the parking spot, do you have to go across the only road to get to that parking spot?
But that's I think what I'm looking
And
for.
there's a road concern. How would you be able to turn around from that parking spot with your car? Yeah, how would you do a turnaround with that road right there?
Okay. Was your name
Emma Davila.
Emma Davila? Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
No, I think there's still more. Okay, I was like,
Just slow.
yeah, okay. Slow to stand up, but I see a little bit of movement every time. Good evening.
My name's Luke Lineweber. I live at 301 Midlothian. Sorry, I just moved there back in March. I was on Indiana and May Street, so we moved over to this area to get away from the traffic on Indiana and into a quieter neighborhood. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. I met with the builder back in September, and I appreciate him addressing some of our concerns here. So I really don't have a whole lot to say. I just want to mention that both plans address missing middle housing. And so kind of the reason we're here is that it's not financially feasible to accomplish the first plan. However, we're not allowed to discuss expenses or costs. So it feels like we're just discussing which one saves more trees. It's kind of what it feels like. But if you do choose to approve this plan, I just want to see, is there any way we can address the construction vehicles? Because although there's the plan now to put the gate in, limiting traffic from Midlothian, is that gate going to be the last thing put in? Will the dump trucks, the dozers, et cetera, have access through? Because my kids and my brother's kids all, play along Midlothian. So if there's any way, if we choose to move forward with it, in limiting the construction vehicle traffic. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public? Okay. All right, council, do you all have questions for the applicant based on comments from the public?
Actually, I have a question for staff.
Okay.
Planner Broadwell, in an earlier slide, there was a reference to the comp plan, and it specifically referenced townhome buildings. What was the number of units that it references? The number of units per building? I think I saw it up here. Wasn't there a slide here that had, or maybe it was the applicant's presentation, it had right there, up to 6. So 6 per building is what that came out of our UDO, or out of our comp plan, rather?
Yes, that slide came out of the.
Okay. I was looking, because there's one building in here that has 5, and I could not remember this number here. It is 6, so we're good. And this is probably a technical question maybe for Reagan and BJ, maybe even Mac. The gentleman that brought up the pedestrian right-of-way cutting through, how would that be technically handled? Would we have right-of-way, easement? Would it just be private access that public's allowed to use?
That parcel would be the, quote, 17th parcel owned by the HOA, the common area, and that is private property collectively owned by those townhome unit owners.
It is not unprecedented for there to be an easement across developments within our jurisdiction, that easement for pedestrian access of some sort.
Yeah, the entire Carapines Greenway path is probably the largest example of that. That's all HOA maintained, however, has access to public with an easement over it.
So in that scenario, who assumes maintenance responsibility?
The HOA, the POA, HOA, yeah.
Even though the public has access to it? Okay.
Yeah, and that may be something, at least what I thought I heard being asked for was, obviously pedestrian access is simple. It's more maybe being able to get a bicycle through there, and that may be possible via how you extend the gate, where maybe there's room for a bicycle and not for yeah, exactly. That's something that'd have to be looked at. But I can imagine a scenario where that could be made to work, where it's still stopping vehicular traffic.
Yeah, we've all seen gates that block vehicle access, but then around one side or the other, they have the ability to bring a bicycle through or a pedestrian through with one of those gates that swings, something like that. It's not uncommon.
And this
Do
might
you
be
like that?
question. This may be a question for the applicant. Have you given any consideration to construction traffic?
I believe we have a condition that addresses that. If we could flip through towards the end.
I've got it right here. It's number 10. I can read it out.
The conditions at the end?
Stops at 9. Stormwater, 10, go back. Keep going. One more, there. Oh, wait a minute.
It's not number 10. I'm happy to read it out if you want. The shared private drive shall serve as the main construction entrance for the site during construction. Construction traffic shall not be allowed onto Clark Street or Midlothian Drive except for the installation of critical project elements that require work on the street.
Okay, so day-to-day construction activities would not be able to access off of Midlothian. But initial installation, road, water, sewer, they would. I mean, you have to. But
Correct.
day-to-day construction activities would not.
Correct, they'd be internal to the site as it was going on. They wouldn't be spilling out.
Well, no, I mean access from a public street. So those day-to-day construction activities would access from Clark.
This condition does not specify that.
Well, read it one more time.
The shared private drive shall serve as the main construction entrance for the site during construction. Construction traffic shall not be allowed onto Clark Street or Midlothian Drive except for the installation of critical project elements that require work on the street.
You guys in reference to construction vehicles parking on the side of Clark or Midlothian.
Okay. It sounds like they can't ever get there.
The proposal was actually to helicopter each day.
Yeah, okay, awesome, that makes sense.
You want to reword that.
Yeah. And in that rewording, and if the applicant is okay with it, is that they agree to make all construction traffic off of Clark, with the exception of, infrastructure installation, the roadway, you obviously have to get up to that off.
Yeah, I think we would be willing to commit to that and maybe change that condition to.
The emergency gate would have to go in before construction's allowed to begin anyway. So that will be secured off. That's part of, to get the utilities accepted and get the roadway.
Sorry, would you
signed off.
come up to the microphone or grab a microphone? I'm so sorry. I should have stopped you when you started earlier.
That's all right. Travis Green, I'm Moore HL Properties and the builder Legacy Construction. The gate, the emergency access gate would be installed whenever the roadway and utilities are put in. That would be something that I would venture to guess engineering and the utility department would require. We wouldn't be able to start construction until that was in anyway. So that's going to block that traffic off anyway. I think that condition was written to say no construction traffic can park on Clark Street or Midlothian. We wouldn't have any vehicles sitting there doing construction. So they have to
Councilman
park
Goodman.
internal to the road, correct?
Does that address?
We can clean up that condition.
Yeah, that language.
That makes that a little bit more clear for you.
Yeah.
So
Mr. Parsons.
if you left condition 9 as was read and simply added a statement that all construction ingress and egress, or all ingress and egress during construction shall occur on Clark Street, that,
Mr. Hanson, while you're up, would you like to address some of the concerns brought by the public? I think anything about it being a dumping ground, adding interconnectivity for pedestrians, bikes, construction we've done, anything else that from
As it relates to being a dumping ground, I know that Travis had talked about this with the resident who had that concern.
So we are aware that one of the previous owners was a contractor of some form, and instead of using a landfill, chose to dig holes and bury his drywall and debris on the site. So that was part of our due diligence whenever we purchased the property. We're aware of that.
Okay.
We've done testing on all of that. We've gone out with our engineers. We've dug test holes. We've looked at it all and located all of that, and we are mitigating that. We're digging that out and putting back in suitable soils.
Okay. Is there something else? Okay. As far as connection for pedestrians and bikes, would you be comfortable having passage through that road?
We'll do something. We'll work with the town on the gate structure so that
Okay.
we make sure pedestrians can go through that. And if we need to do an easement across that road for the connection, we have no problem with that at all.
Okay. And then, the question from Ms. Haggerty about the target market was missing middle, which I think we talk about missing middle a lot, and we have an idea of what it means, but would you like to address what you all feel like it means, I guess, for the good of the public?
So it's really kind of, in our mind, it's bridging a gap between apartment living and single-family residential. Trying to hit that price gap that's in there.
Okay. Council, did you all have other questions or things they needed to address?
There was a couple comments just about the fluidity and movement in there of cars and being able to turn around and get around with that 20-foot street and the way you anticipate the driveways in the middle and the other parking spots. I mean, you have professional engineers that are helping you. You fully envision that it's going to be fine and not a problem?
Yeah, so as it relates to the parking, yes, you would have to cross the drive to get to your units. Similar to how any kind of parking lot is designed, that, you would have to cross the parking lot in certain areas to be able to do that. The reason we had to put the parking spaces on that side is if we had shifted the drive over, we would have taken out way more trees and than we currently had. So that's why we located the parking spots and garages on that side. As it relates to getting vehicles turned around, residents would be able to pull into their parking spot, back out, and turn, back out towards the north, and then get turned around to go back to the south. The emergency access gate is not until the very northern side of the project site. So kind of just quickly showing, if you had to park in this garage, you'd be able to turn in and back out, and then turn around and go that way. And same with the parking option. There's enough room between this last parking spot and the emergency access gate to be able to get each other around.
Do you know the distance between the units on the Clark Street, Midlothian Street sides, the distance from those to the interior units? Where you're saying there'd be like sidewalk and they have access?
It's 20, so these units are approximately 20 feet, so 20, 40, 100, approximately 100 to 150
Oh,
feet.
to the parking spot. I actually meant from the units to the side of the middle units. So like that area they're walking between, yes.
Oh, to this.
No, just how much space is between them?
Oh,
The gap,
between
yeah.
here?
Yep,
I believe it's 30 feet, or 30 feet, yeah.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I share Mr. McInerney's issue. I think it's a lot of units that are being put onto this piece of property. With limited access to parking, limited access, even walking around.
These would be the fronts of the units, so this wouldn't be someone's backyard right here.
But you're walking right next to somebody's side yard too, right? Like you're walking up against the side of their house.
The pocket neighborhoods are typically laid out that fashion.
Yeah.
Where you have those sorts of areas.
Okay,
But knowing what the levels of the Travis landscapes do, it wouldn't be unsightly.
okay,
It'd be a comfortable walk.
okay. All right, council, do you have other questions? Are you ready to close the public hearing? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Is there discussion or motions? I will say, one of the hardest things that we're asked to do, and I think that our planning board is asked to do, is to look at projects that change density from single-family neighborhood to a little bit more dense infill. And having set, bless you, on this council for 4 years and having worked through the comprehensive plan update, part of part of what I hear out in the public is that we don't want apartments. They're like, oh my God, no more apartments. And just in case you don't know, we haven't approved any apartments in 20 months, I think-ish. They're just all getting built right now. But part of our redoing of the comprehensive plan was to create these dense infill areas as a way to create housing in lieu of apartments. So it's hard to sit up here and hear people say, we don't want density, and I don't want, I'll tell you what I hear. I hear people say, I don't want anyone in my neighborhood. No one move in, that's it. And it's hard to hear that and then to look at projects like this that are actually solving a problem that we know we have in a way that fits it in a way that does feel like Southern Pines. And it's really hard when the planning board misses that. And that's what I'm stuck on, that confusion of like, I don't know, I'm confused at how they're not seeing that long-term goal that was laid out in our joint community comprehensive plan when they evaluate it. So I am a little stuck on that. But regardless of how this project falls, I just wanted to say that it's hard to do this job sitting up here. And to, I don't know, to see any change when we know that change is hard. But I'm not making a motion. So is there a motion? I mean,
I'd rather like sit on it.
so I would rather sit on, what I would really like to see is it to not be 16 units. I'd like to see it like 14 units.
I usually agree with my counsel on everything, but I see too many homeless people. I have students who have no home because they have to stay with relatives because they can't afford anything in Southern Pines. I don't want to sit on it.
Yeah.
I see the concerns. I've heard from the town staff. We've heard from Mr. Hanson. We've heard from Travis. I'm sorry, I don't remember your last name. I don't know why. If there was something blaring that we needed to concern ourselves with, I can understand, let's wait on it. And I understand change is difficult. But change isn't difficult when you don't have what you need. So I don't know. I'm just saying, town.
Would you like to make a motion?
Well, it is clear, to Councilwoman Gray's point, that a clear danger or clear issue for Southern Pines is the accessibility to workforce housing and middle housing. And I shared with a group this weekend a story about a police officer. I don't know if he's a police officer in Southern Pines, but I heard this from a resident. He's a police officer in Moore County. His wife is a nurse at First Health, and they live in Rayford. And, you know, how arrogant, for lack of a better word, that we expect the people that protect us, that respond to our concerns, live somewhere else because they can't afford to live here. And part of our comprehensive long-range plan has directly pointed to the fact that we need more of this in our community. And secondly, our part is to decide, you know, that it absolutely makes sense. More dense projects closer to your downtown area, closer to your services, absolutely makes sense. If this was in the, you know, far-flung areas next to incompatible uses, that might not make sense. We've done a good job of approving some workforce, middle housing projects. And I feel like that we should, I guess the message that we've sent out to the developed community is we need workforce housing and we need accessible housing for our first responders, for our teachers, for our nurses. And so the indication is if you bring us a project that fits, that's the key word, that fits, and that's an objective or a subjective determination, I guess, then we should approve it. So I don't disagree with you.
Staff, would you like to put together a motion that updates some of the language and includes, yes, the language and the conditions, and includes the interconnectivity for pedestrians, bikes? Was there anything else?
Yeah, I think Councilwoman Peterson's point about making sure that the verbiage was saying
on-
2 to 3.
On height and
We
stories.
need to make sure it's 2.
I've already drafted a few changes. It's messed up the numbers for 4 of the points. Building height, the shared private drive, emergency access, allowing for the pedestrian ingress and egress, clarifying the language about the construction traffic. We also talked about the water and sewer lines and them connecting between the two and connecting off of the 20-foot drive, just to make that abundantly clear. I don't know if you want me to incorporate that as well. But I'm happy to take a recess, maybe run this by
That would
the
be great.
applicant as well.
Yeah. Okay, it's 7:40. Is 5 minutes enough or you want some more time?
5 should be good.
Okay. All right, let's get back here at 7:45 according to that clock.
I'll read them off by topic. I'll read them off specifically unless they want me to.
Thank you. If everyone will get back to their seats, we will restart our meeting. It was 7. My timing is terrible. Yes, ma'am. Okay, I understand that staff has written out, based on our comments and discussion, some motions, a motion. Would you guys like to read that into the record?
Yes, members of council. So what we are proposing to do here is I'll read off a motion for your consideration that will conclude with some work we did with the applicants. We added 1 condition and modified 3. Added 2. All right, added 2 and amended 2, and they are related to ensuring the discussion regarding the number of stories is restricted to 2. The pedestrian and bicycle access is provided both around the gate as well as a pedestrian and bicycle access easement to allow those 2 means of transportation to get across. Restricting construction traffic to Clark Street and parking, construction parking to neither being on Clark Street nor Midlothian. And also the water and sewer connections, the water and sewer lines connecting via the 20-foot access drive. That way, the main line is going to be going to through that access drive. Now, we don't want to say anything about sewer and water because sewer may not have to connect through. Water likely will, but we don't know that for sure. But the main part is that the main line will go through the driveway and the service laterals will come off the driveway in the interior of the project, and that will prevent the trees from around the perimeter being impacted. So,
Before you read off any more details of the motions, did the council have any preference on parking spots versus the garages?
My understanding is that that is something you are going to decide during TRC based on what you think is marketable. Did you want to limit to one or the other?
I'm sure they don't want to limit. Yeah, they don't want to limit it. They want it to be open. Are you okay with both?
I don't have a problem with it.
I think that whether the developer wants to limit one way or the other should not be the question we're asking, but what we would like to see. And I also would like to suggest that we consider a drop in the number of units.
Do you all have any concerns about the garage versus parking spots? Okay. Okay. I think you can continue then. Did you want to read off the motion?
I can do that. You got those motions pulled up. I'll read both and just wrap them all into one, if that's acceptable to the council.
Yes, please.
After reviewing the proposed conditional zoning district and after considering the criteria for approval of zoning map amendments found in the UDO 2.17.9, the proposed amendment to the Town of Southern Pines zoning map is reasonable, in the public interest, and consistent with the current character of the Suburban Settlements Character District and the criteria set forth in the Town of Southern Pines Unified Development Ordinance 2.17.9. And therefore, I move to approve File Z0525 with the conditions submitted by the applicant for the RM1 conditional zoning district and as modified by staff and agreed to in writing by the applicant at the October 14th, 2025 public hearing as follows. Building height shall be limited to 40 feet and 2 stories. Number 2, the shared private drive shall have a 20-foot minimum width, an emergency access only gate adjacent to Midlothian Drive that allows for pedestrian and bicycle ingress and egress, and a public pedestrian and bicycle access easement. Number 3, the Clark Street entrance of the shared private drive shall serve as the main construction entrance for the site during construction. Construction traffic shall not be allowed to park on Clark Street or Midlothian Drive, except for the installation of critical project elements that require work on the street. And finally, water and sewer lines shall connect via the 20-foot access drive and connect to the townhouse units from the 20-foot access drive. All other conditions as listed in the staff report are the same.
Deborah, would you like to make this a move?
Yes, so moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah, just kind of want to have one follow-up question first. Tree protection during construction or during TRC, the picture that they gave during TRC, they will have to go through the tree protection standards so that what they represented here, other than the reasons why they would remove them, would follow the tree protection standards, be protected before construction began.
That is correct. UDO requires tree protection fencing.
Those in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, motion carries. Ms. Gray, I do want to say thank you for, just as Mr. Pate, in the middle of the presentation, sort of like brings us back into like, this is what we're focusing on, it's so nice to have just the clarity of wrapping up something that we're discussing and refocusing on the things that are really important to our community. And I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Okay, our next thing on our agenda is a evidentiary, so a quasi-judicial hearing on the same site, same project, the Clark Street Townhomes. And this is it's a quasi-judicial hearing. So Mac, would you like to go through the qualifications for us?
Yes, ma'am. Does any member of council have a fixed opinion prior to this hearing acceptable to change?
No.
Does any member of council had ex parte communications about this matter?
No.
No.
Does any member of council have a close familial, business, or other associational relationship with an affected person?
No.
Does any member of council have a financial interest in the outcome of this matter?
No.
Does the applicant wish to challenge any member of council on the basis of impartiality? Thank you.
Anyone who plans to speak in this hearing, if you'll please stand up. I think the applicant will need to as well, whoever's presenting for the applicant. Travis, go ahead and stand up just in case you answer questions. Okay, would you like to go?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, Mr.
All right.
Broadwell.
Good evening. Now moving on to the evidentiary hearing portion of this whole project. Would like to enter the staff report for this project into the record as Exhibit A. This presentation as Exhibit B. Just have one slide. Now, this part is very straightforward. Since the site plan that you all just approved in the conditional zoning district is the exact same as their preliminary plat, and those 4 items that we just changed do not change the actual physical dimensions or makeup that are associated with the preliminary plat, I see no issues here with approving this right behind it, and therefore recommend approval.
Thank you.
All right.
Council, do you have questions for Mr. Broadwell? Okay, seeing 2 microphones on, do you all have questions? Ms. Peterson, do you have a question? Would you like to turn your microphone off, and then I'll just use that to like,
Be glad to.
that'll be, so I'll know you have a question. All right, would the applicant like to speak? Do you have anything additional to add?
No, we don't.
Okay. Okay, as a quasi-judicial hearing, there is an opportunity for the public to be involved. Anything you say regarding real estate valuation or traffic will need to be by expert and therefore subject to not being included in our consideration. But if anyone from the public would like to speak, this is your opportunity. Okay, seeing none. All right, council. Would you like me to close the hearing? Okay. I will close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Can I ask first if there is, if anyone up here has any evidence or findings of fact that they would put forth in a motion against this application, if they would just talk about it?
So reasons for us, reasons.
Yeah,
to say-
if there's any findings of fact that you've heard or found into the documentation that you would put forth in the form of a motion against this application to do that.
Okay, hearing none. All right, is there a motion? It's okay, take your time. I know it's, especially when we have two hearings back to back, it's similar motions but different.
Attachment. Yeah, I move to adopt attachment 1 of the staff reports drafted as findings of fact regarding the proposed preliminary plat MAPP-04-25.
Is there a second?
How does that? Findings of fact need to be as amended and modified tonight, or is this different, separate? It's all in here complete?
Findings of fact are fine.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It was it was the conditions of the zoning approval.
Okay. I'm glad you asked. Is there a second?
You can do it.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then now we will vote on whether to approve. So the next motion.
Yes.
That motion carries. And then the motion to approve.
Okay, so then I move to approve the preliminary plat MAPP-04-25.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Motion carries. Seeing that we did these mirror so closely the development that was on Hale Street, I think it's good to see that the way that we are working through our comprehensive plan is not limited to one part of town or the other, or it's density in the central part of the town is density in the central part of the town. I think that we're doing a good job of staying to that. And I just,
Can I make a general comment as to that?
yeah, please.
Because, I mean,
Staff and council on this.
yeah, the one thing I say struggle with is what we're going to be faced with is, yes, we want to recognize what that comprehensive plan called for, and it's more this and less multi-apartments, but we need to be careful. Where is the slope of how dense is too dense? You know, this one, for me, it was okay, maybe if it were two units less, and it was a small number, but just be careful that we don't, you know, keep moving to a period where like we're getting way too dense and trying to meet the comprehensive plan. So I just want us to take each of these projects very carefully, based on where they're located and based on what they ask us as we see these more moving forward.
Sorry, thank you. Okay. Our second evidentiary hearing is the Veterans Guardian Preliminary Development Plan, file PD-03-25. Mr. Maddox, are you our staff? Oh, sorry. Thank you for
ma'am.
qualifying us.
Does any member of council have a fixed opinion prior to this hearing that is not susceptible to change?
No.
Has any member of council had ex parte communications about this matter?
No.
Does any member of council have a close familial, business, or other associational relationship with an affected person? No. Does any member of council have a financial interest in the outcome of this matter?
No.
Does the applicant wish to challenge any member of the council on the basis of impartiality?
Would the applicant like to challenge any of us? Thank you. Okay, anyone who plans to speak on this hearing, please stand and raise your right hand. Thank you. All right, Mr. Maddox, good evening.
Good evening, Council. Mason Maddox, Planner 2 with the town. I will insert my staff report as Exhibit A into the record and this presentation as Exhibit B. Thank you. And forgive me for this.
Do you need some water?
Oh, no, I'm fine. Thank you. We have an application for to develop Veterans Guardian. It will be a 2-story, approximately 27,000 square foot office building with 246 parking spaces and 12 bike spaces. This application also includes conceptual stormwater plans and watershed allocation requests for 8.67 acres within the Southern Pines Corporate Park. Next slide, please. The image on the left shows the land as it is now. Those are the parcels. The land is yet to be subdivided properly. Staff did not find any issues with this at this time. And of course, the image on the right being the zoning of the corporate park, everything in that dark brown being the corporate park within the plan development itself. Next slide. Here's a slightly better photo of those various parcels, just for your identification. You can see the outline of what will become Veterans Guardian, what would become Veterans Guardian, approximately taking that bullet shape. Always back to these bullet shapes with parcels, aren't we? And the next slide, please. I made this brief chart just to illustrate the requirements of the CDP. It requires that 75% of the land uses in the corporate park be industrial, and no more than 25% can be non-industrial / supportive. Veterans Guardian would fall under a supportive land use, and if approved, would chew up about half of the allocation in the corporate park for non-industrial uses. All right. The land use of veteran services is explicitly permitted within the conceptual development plan documents within the PD. So no issues there, no inconsistencies. Next. There's a slight wetlands issue that you may have read about. Nothing I really need to go over. They're not present on site. That's the short version. We can keep moving forward, but stop me if you want this story, but nothing there. All right. This image actually shows the preliminary development plan itself. I'll pause here for just a moment. I'm sure you've seen it in your packets as well. You can see the large parking areas adjacent to the proposed office building itself. All right. Staff has drafted with the applicant's consent this condition, which would aim to preserve trees on site. Can we go back to the first slide real quick, actually? The very first, thank you. Forgot to mention that is an image of the site now as it is presently heavily vegetated. And back to that condition slide, thank you. And that condition is something that's becoming standard in our practice to preserve that which is not required to be removed. The applicant was comfortable with this. What's not pictured on your screen but is in your packet is a second condition which would allocate watershed credits toward this property should you elect to do so. So there is a slight grammatical flaw that's an issue of mine in your draft motion, which says one condition. There are, of course, two conditions for your viewing tonight. The planning board conveyed no issues whatsoever. We don't need to go to that one. No need. No issues were conveyed by the planning board, and so staff recommend approval.
Just out of curiosity, which watershed is that one in? Is it the one we got a lot more acreage on from the Phoenix thing, or is it in the other one?
Which actual one? I have to pull it up on James.
Okay, so the one we got a big addition to recently, okay.
Great question. That's all from staff. The applicant is about to, you're just here for questions? I'm just here for questions.
I have a question. So when you write something, all existing trees 10-inch diameter or larger that do not interfere with essential site grading or the installation of building footprints, vehicle access areas, or utilities shall be preserved to protect the town's natural character. So how many trees do you anticipate that would actually help? Because it seems like from the map that there's going to be site grading for the building, and then the parking lots are another just total wipeout as far as any trees go. With I see no plan to try to preserve any trees.
I'll defer that one to the applicant actually to speak a little bit more.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Goodman?
Councilman Goodman.
Per the UDO, what is the number of parking spots required?
110.
Thank you, Mayor Clement. Yes, far less than what is being proposed, yes.
246.
And 46.
246?
246.
I'm sorry, it sounded like you said 246?
I said 246.
Out of 110.
No, so I wanted to address the same question, so the picture says there's additional, like they may add on to this building,
Correct.
and then the parking spots that we are requiring is probably the square footage of the office building that they're, is done now as opposed to the expansion.
As
Do you know
opposed to
what
the expansion.
the expansion would require as far as parking? Just trying to figure out like why 246? It's a lot.
If you have that.
All right, we'll hold that question.
Otherwise, I can do that calculation.
I just wanted to get 110 is what's required, is the.
Minimum, yes,
And 246
parking
is what
minimum.
they're asking for.
I'll let the applicant address if what the number would be with the expansion.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
All right, ready?
All right, should we to you guys? I'll make some stuff.
Two pairs of glasses. Good evening, members of council. My name is Tim Carpenter, LKC Engineering, 140 Aquashed Court, Aberdeen, soon to be Southern Pines. Thank you for being here. We're glad to be here tonight, representing Veterans Guardians. Veterans Guardian we've done a few projects with them. They're currently headquartered in the Trotter Hills Development in Pinehurst. They are a Veterans Affairs organization that helps identify and obtain benefits for veterans. Mark Christensen, who's the chief of staff at Veterans Guardian, is here tonight. The question that Councilman Goodman brought up, 246, 110. So 110 is the minimum required based on the square footage. 246 is based on their anticipated employee load. This building will be occupied by, obviously, a lot of people. Most of these are staff. They don't get as many walk-in visitor type things, although they do have some clients that visit their site. Most of these are staff. So I don't want to call it a call center, but it is a lot of people that are managing a lot of benefits for veterans. So I would like to take just a minute and let Mark introduce himself and tell a little bit about their business.
So you said that the 246 is based on the number of employees, is that what you said?
Well, there are some, so the upper lots, there are some visitor spaces there.
Some walk-ins.
Yeah, for walk-ins, but the majority of these spaces will be used by employees. And the employee load, the ultimate employee load, is somewhere around 250. It's somewhere around 250 employees. And Mason has another slide that we have provided that shows, so I want to talk to your issue about tree preservation too, but so they're buying 8.67 acres. Right there, what you're seeing, they're probably using maybe 5 of that. So they're not buying 8.5 acres to let the rest of it sit in woods. Obviously, we have to deal with stormwater and stormwater management ponds, which are shown here. This is a slide that's probably possibly indicative of what could come later. So if you look at the red bubble to the upper left on the screen, that it could be an extension of that parking lot. And of course, you see in the middle of the red bubble, that is just an addition of the building going out to the plan east there, which that area would be graded regardless because there's a lot of slope there. And then the area to the far right should be reserved for additional parking and potentially a satellite building. And we realize that if they do build another building there, they'll have to come back, before council and go through some amendment of this plan.
Mr. Carpenter, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, and I know this is not what we do. What are the black dots?
Those are trees.
Okay.
Those are, now, in fairness, those are large trees that were, so 3.5 acres of this parcel is owned by BAT Properties, which is us. We were going to build an office building there at one point. So we did tree survey out there, and I believe those are 12-inch and larger trees. Because back at the time, we were doing 12-inch and larger, not 6 or 8. So that's a carryover from that survey. So that's what you see there. And the stormwater pond that you see on the right there, so this set of drawings is a fairly progressed set of drawings that we've been working on beyond this approval. So that is a reasonably appropriate size device for the impervious area. And that watershed is a water quality pond, so we'll have to, it's a quality and quantity to meet the town standard within this watershed. So if I may have Mark come up and just introduce himself, if you don't mind.
Madam Mayor, Town Council, members of staff, thanks. And I'm here with my good friend Tim to talk about how excited we are about this project. Veterans Guardian is founded in 2017. located currently in Pinehurst. We occupy in Pinehurst 3 facilities. And the goal of this project is to take all of our employees, for the most part, and put them under one roof. And this is the place for us to do it. It provides us with a big enough footprint for us to do that, and essentially house our employees. So when I started in 2019, I was employee number 30 to Veterans Guardian. Today, we have 190 employees. The vast majority of them all work here in Pinehurst. And so when we talk about expanding, we continue to grow. As you've seen, we've grown from 30 to almost 200. We don't have remote employees with the exception of about 10 employees that were military spouses generally who we let transport their jobs. So we help veterans with their disability claims, and we helped nearly 33,000 veterans worldwide last year with their claims. And so there is no shortage of work for us to do, and I cannot hire employees fast enough to help all the veterans that need assistance with what they do. And so when we looked at this project, what we wanted to do is anticipate growth to about 300. And that's why you see the big number of parking spots. That's why you see the big footprint here, is to accommodate for the growth that we have, that we anticipate. Right now, we occupy about 15,000 or so square feet total in those 3 facilities. This allows us to be in a more appropriate sized building, consolidated, and allows us to better serve our veteran clients across the globe. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mr. Goodman?
Tongue in cheek, can you get them to carpool?
We do actually talk about that because we do have a fair number, to your point, who live in Rayford. And so it is not uncommon for people to carpool to the extent they can, but life gets in the way, right? Not everybody has to pick up kids at the same time and those sorts of things. But we do try and encourage it.
Anything else? Yeah, so we were throwing together some math numbers up here. Based on the square footage of the building and the number of parking spots requested, you're actually limited to about 111 square feet per employee if you had 246 employees, which feels awfully small. But then I remember my cubicle days, and a cubicle is like 6 by 5, at least mine was.
But you had hallways and a bathroom.
That's true. There was a bathroom down the hall, and a place for coffee. So I guess the parking is a concern. Like, it just doesn't seem like the building is, I don't know that the building's big enough for 246 people. Have you all, how did you guys get to, how did you get to that number of parking that you're asking for?
Well, so the number of the parking that we're asking for is simply put, is based on the current anticipated employee load. There are 193 in 3 facilities now. 27,000 square feet of building. Yes, that is tight with those people, but if you've ever been in a call center, not everybody has an office. Not everybody has an office door. They're presumed cube space right beside each other. They're on headphones. They're talking to veterans, and they're helping them navigate through their veteran affairs process. So,
Is that 246 all 9, I'll use the example of a 9 to 5 job, or are you on shifts so that you help people in different time zones and things? I mean, are there literally going to be 246 people in that building at one moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Appreciate it. Generally speaking, the vast majority are 8:30 to 5 local here. There are some that extend a little bit beyond that. So there's a little bit of crossover. And it's not uncommon for us to have had shifts that work 10:37, 12:30 to 9. So we do have that.
Just for clarity, so you said there's actually 193, did I hear 193? I thought I heard 250 all the time.
Currently.
Currently 193. And I know you're anticipating 300. Got you. Okay. And there are 2 floors, right?
yes.
Okay.
So what you see here is you see from the Air Tool Drive side on the side, the plan south there, that is kind of looking at the street grade side of the building. And then as you go around the back, which is the Tyler Industrial Drive, that parking lot is lower, so it's kind of basement level. So that's primarily employee parking with some employee parking up top as well.
So with that much parking and that many employees, have you all looked into the traffic?
We have provided a a trip generation letter to the town.
Okay.
And we'll obviously need to deal with that through James and town engineering staff.
Did I miss it in the
But,
packet?
Mayor, if I may add on to that a little bit.
Yes.
As you know, with the Amazon facility, they had just done a pretty extensive TIA, I guess, for that facility. So they had all the background traffic data. So we provided a trip gen letter that provided the use for this facility, and there was no impact to the.
That's on top of Amazon's?
Right, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I'm sorry, I just missed the letter if it was in there. And did you say it's not in there?
I didn't see it.
I didn't see it either. So question for the staff, did you all have a copy of a traffic study or opinion? We do not have one?
I did not bring it with me.
Okay. Yeah, I would,
But it was reviewed by town staff and during the completeness review. I mean, we had review by town engineer, so.
okay. So you all have seen it, and you all have a copy of it somewhere?
Yeah, we can't speak for James, but we haven't seen it.
Okay.
It's not in our materials.
I think I would prefer to see that before we make a decision, at least so we have all the information in front of us.
Well, but, I mean, did we not receive completeness review and no further comments from the town engineer?
All I can speak to right now is what we have in our file. And if it did go to the town engineer and nothing was submitted to our file about it, then
It may not have been required for completeness. So that's what I'm researching.
yeah.
Okay.
Who currently owns this parcel?
So it's a combination, Mr. Goodman. There's BAT Properties owns 3.5 acres, which BAT Properties is LKC. And then RAB Investments owns the balance of the bullet shape that Mason referenced, which would be to the, I can show you on the screen. So BAT owns this parcel.
Yeah.
And then the balance of this is RAB, which was part of the larger RAB investment.
So just a question for process and completeness. The current owner of this land is aware of this
Yeah.
proposal?
Yes, yeah, we've got applicant appointment of agent through Chris Jordan and RAB and all that, so.
Okay, there it is at the end. I missed it.
All right.
Well, actually, that's not an appointment of agent. That's just the applicant. Watershed.
There was the staff recommendation that we had a condition for some tree preservation. Would you all be willing to work with us on that?
Yes, of course. So the reason we showed this map is because anywhere where we're not grading, we're more than happy to preserve the trees. I mean, we would like to get existing vegetation credits where they apply. And if the parcel or if the piece to the far right in the corner never gets developed, then under this current phase, there's no reason to grade that right now. So we're not grading that now. And unless they come back to you for another building at a later date, then for the interim, that stays vacant.
Who would be they? Just someone else or them?
It'd be Veterans Guardian, yes, sir.
Oh, maybe they go up, not out.
Pardon?
Maybe they go up, third floor, not out.
Well, it would still require additional parking. It would require town approvals for a site plan, assuming they were adding anything to the site.
I mean, I understand the use and I understand the nature of the intensity of employees, but man, that's a lot of parking.
Well, I mean, I don't believe that, I'm not sure where else this type of facility would fit in Southern Pines. It is an industrial park and it is an employment center as stated in your comp plan. So it seems like a pretty
Yeah, say
logical
that last
fit.
part again, is about the comp plan. I just missed it.
The
Calls for a call
corporate
center.
park is an employment center as shown in the comp. plan.
Okay, right, I get it. I get it. And I don't have a problem with anything about it. It's just the big old asphalt.
And the only, I guess maybe question or comment I would add is does it matter if the building's 27,000 square feet or 157,000 square feet? If you're creating 250 jobs, that's job creation in an employment center in an industrial park. And that would be I guess that would be my rebut to a lot
get
of
it.
parking spaces. It's a lot of head counts and it's a lot of jobs.
And it does seem to be an appropriate place for it.
It does.
I'm sorry, I may have missed something somewhere, and then I know the visual is off the screen right now. I'm trying to figure out, where's the parking pretty much going to be? In the top part of the bullet area, or? I may have missed something, I'm
Are
sorry.
you down over there?
I'm down because what I'm trying to figure out is whether or not we ever received a TIA, and if it was
Well,
submitted. and
it was not a TIA.
If it was a TDA, if it was a trip, like if
It
there
was
was
a trip jam.
if there was a discussion between you and James or your firm and the town engineer regarding trip generation and whether it was a TDA or whatever was submitted, I wasn't even CC'd on those emails, so I don't know that it exists.
It was not a TIA, it was not a TDA, it was a trip gen letter. Just the simple letter that
And what
showed the
was the
number of trips.
determination that you made?
I don't have it with me, BJ, I apologize.
I guess, well,
Philip
that's
did.
what I'm trying to figure out, is like trying to resolve this, because if it was a trip generation that your firm prepared and submitted to the town engineer, who then made a determination that TDA and a TIA was not necessary due to the background data available for the design, then that key piece of information, that essentially the requirement was waived.
Correct.
We don't have evidence of that on our team, because it may have happened between your firm and James, in which case that would be evidence you'd want to submit to the file. Now, I don't want to put you on the spot because I believe you,
Right.
and then so I don't want to, but we can't corroborate that, you might say.
Right.
And we were scrambling to make sure that we didn't miss something in an email traffic, like, hey, here's a TDA, and then it got misplaced or something like that. So that's what we're scrambling to figure out. And I'm in my emails, that's why I turned off the screen. Let me turn it back on.
Okay.
Okay, so short of you all being able to find it right now, I think that what it feels like up here is that the council would like to wait on the decision until we at least know that everything has been received and accounted for.
So do we recess?
Yeah.
Are we recessing the hearing or would it
I think probably continuing, I'm probably asking for a motion to continue it.
continue? Well, I'm sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
But I was going to sort of Ms. Grady's question.
Oh,
about the
absolutely, please.
21.
I might as well.
The building, and then what we call the lower parking lot, lower elevation, which we have a basement entry, kind of employee parking here, and then kind of an upper parking lot here, and this will probably be your space in front of the building for visitor parking. So if your handicap are scattered about, room for handicap parking space on the lower level.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was just wanting to make sure that the areas where you said there were some very large and older trees, that parking wouldn't come anywhere near those areas, and so I get it, yeah.
So the reason I showed this, honestly, so we're grading, this is the grading. This will be preserved for the short term, if there's no current building expansion stays there. This could be preserved for a later date for a building, but there are no current plans to expand that building right now. So for the time being, that's wooded. This area right here would be graded as part of the initial project just because of the grade changes on the site. So, and it's internal to all the department data parking. Perimeter areas, all the trees that won't go there.
While you're up there, how many feet does it slope off Airtool down to the building? A lot, right?
Well, so yes, you're like 433 there to 404 there.
Tim, will you grab the microphone from our staff? Thank you. It's okay. BJ's walking around too.
BJ, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but wait, Tim, will you repeat what you just said, just so that it is on the
Yeah, from a
record?
grading perspective, where I'm putting here is an elevation of 433. This is I'm trying to have a hard time seeing myself. So that's 403 there. So there's roughly 30 feet of fall across the site.
So we're able to make up a lot of that, so the two-story building certainly fits within that, within that grading.
So in the lower FFE is 417, so.
Give or take, yeah, 417, 431 upper, 417 lower.
In the Tyler Industrial Court, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, all right?
No, you're fine.
Okay, the Tyler Industrial Court Road, it's a private right-of-way. So really, what?
That's the Amazon Road.
Yeah, that's the Amazon Road. So really, from the public perspective, some of that parking is hidden behind the building.
Oh, absolutely, a lot of it.
Down the slope, okay.
And hidden by grade, too.
Okay. Did you ask about landscaping?
I don't know there's gonna be much money, you're just gonna look at the top of trees.
Yeah.
So the grade difference between, let me look at this. So for.
They're along Air Tool.
Along Air Tool, it looks like it's around.
Well, Air Tool runs downhill, right? So it's coming downhill this direction.
Right.
To the intersection of Tyler Industrial. But if you go up to, let's say our upper parking lot entrance at 436 and our lowest parking lot entrance at 404.
I'm trying to get the slope between Air Tool and that first parking lot in front of the building. The first parking lot, right? Yep.
In that 40-foot setback?
A little bit odd because it's running on it. Are you
Yeah.
talking about this slope?
Yeah.
Oh, we're running 2% or less across the parking lot. So
Okay.
it's it's probably 5%, just guessing.
So BJ.
Yep.
The landscaping between the road, Air Tool and that front parking lot adjacent to Air Tool, between the building and Air Tool, what would the landscaping there be? Because it doesn't look like there's trees there. Maybe there's none there now.
Well, we're not showing a landscaping plan here.
I know, I was just talking about based on the ordinance.
Based on this layout, it'll just be street trees. That's all it will be at this time. The minimum requirement would be street trees along Air Tool Drive, because the vehicle use area for that parking area is not adjacent to Air Tool.
What's the elevation where the proposed storm water plan is?
395-ish. It changes, I mean, it's up to 400.
Okay.
The bottom's 395.
Bottom, somewhere around 395, yeah. In this area, so this is basically an existing pipe coming across Tyler Industrial, and it's at 390. So 390, the low side of Tyler Industrial, somewhere probably around 395, I would guess, which is obviously recently constructed.
And if the proposed additional parking and building were to happen, then basically you're looking at a very small round of mature trees over to the right, and a very small one up in the upper left-hand corner.
Yeah, so I don't know what would happen here.
Right.
So
But it sounds like that's a plan.
It may be a small parking lot and a small building, and there's more of this that gets preserved than we know of. But for the time being, it stays until we have to come back and see you.
But maybe is, not a good guarantee, right? Okay.
This area is probably not getting developed just because of topography and such.
Right. Is that lower than the stormwater pond right there?
Probably. My existing contours are turned off in here. Probably a little bit lower.
Okay.
So I want to ask a process question. So what we're looking at today is a PDP. When this step moves to CDP, can we talk about preservation of trees on the property?
So the CDP for the corporate park is already in the books. That's the current zoning.
Right. So this is.
The PDP is demonstrating consistency with the CDP. And so that's the stage we're at now. Yeah.
This is it.
We can't ask for more trees.
If you did, you would want to lean on one of the criteria for a PDP, such as consistency with the plan development requirements, appropriateness of this area, things like that. And then you would want to look at what your concerns are and weigh those against the criteria. And so there is subjectivity allowed in the interpretation of how the PDP meets the CDP, because that's one of the criteria, obviously, and then the other criteria in there, so.
What are you wishing you could say, Mr. Carpenter?
Well, I'm just sitting here trying to find some common ground where
Right.
where we're building in a corporate park, a large employment center. It's the site, we're going to keep trees, right? And there's no doubt. Are we going to keep 30% of the trees? No, there's no way. I mean, we're going to use the site
Right.
as it's intended. So Veterans Garden, this is their corporate headquarters. This is where
Right.
they intend to stay. This is going to be a nice looking building. It's going to be a nice looking site. And we will keep all the trees humanly possible. And as I said, I think for the foreseeable future, you correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, the area in the lower right, that there are no current plans there. No,
Right.
you can see there is a utility connection cutting through there, but that's the only current anticipated clearing there.
I mean, we all obviously want your business to do well and grow.
Sure.
I mean, that's good. but-
So, I apologize that I can't remember your name, but if I could ask, tell me your name.
Mark Christensen.
Mark, thank you. Mr. Christensen, thank you very much. Is there any chance you guys would consider doing a parking lot that did not involve asphalt? That would be, where you were actually working around the trees
Well,
and had gravel? Is that a possibility?
I would tell you.
We don't have that option.
Okay,
And the town doesn't supply that option. Over 10 parking spaces has got to be paved or hard surface, is that right? So anything over 10 spaces has to be
right.
paved or hard
So
surface.
is there, if they were willing to consider that, is there a way for the town to adjust to that?
To allow for gravel?
To allow for gravel and preserving trees?
Preserving trees, yes. Allowing for gravel for a parking lot of that scale, for fire apparatus access and
Not
things like
okay.
that, and it's just not
Okay.
okay. Because, the fire department would be the first to say, one thing we frequently forget is that cars light on fire a lot too.
Right.
And so,
Right.
large parking lots. May I throw something out there
Sure.
at this time, just for
Yeah.
consideration?
Thanks.
What staff is hearing is that we have, first of all, when this proceeds to site plan review, I've been corresponding with the town engineer, and of course, he's not here, so I don't want to say what he has for the record or anything like that. But I can say it will be a requirement prior to approval of site plan that if a TDA or TIA is required, that it be done. Now,
Right.
let's say, speaking to what may have occurred in the past about whether or not, the fact of the matter is, this is a corporate park. It was designed, Air Tool Drive was designed for traffic volume. Tyler Industrial Court was designed for traffic volume coming from Amazon, and they passed their muster. And so prior to getting approval of a site plan, it would be required to make sure that the proposed trip generation is locked down, and whether or not a TIA is required, that be done, and impact mitigation be provided. They don't get waived from that based on this after PDP goes through, so because that's in the UDO. Number two, what I'm hearing is some concern about, now I'm going to just throw this out for consideration in real time. What I'm hearing is a lot of concern about the scale of the parking, and what I'm also hearing is that the parking is necessary because it's a office building and it is a corporate park. This is a location where staff sees this as being different than a retail development in the middle of town that's highly visible, has a lot of traffic. This is a destination pretty much set up, oriented, and zoned for this for many years exactly for this purpose. If the council is feeling that the visibility of large oceans of parking that are going to serve this building, the visibility of that from adjoining streets is the concern, because again, it's a corporate park, we really are in a ballpark where maybe we just tighten up this condition about the retention of trees. Because right now, when you look at, I'll just throw out an example, the northeast corner of this site, and you see the stormwater right there, the entire, all that stormwater pond is heavily graded right up to Tyler Industrial Court. So if you look at this condition, it says that do not interfere with essential site grading or the installation of building footprints, vehicle access areas, utilities shall be preserved. Those could go, and we don't have much argument about that. So I would recommend a discussion with the applicants possibly about some type of buffer around the outside of it. And then what happens inside, whether it's stormwater, parking, or building, nobody's gonna see it. It's a corporate park, and it's going to be like
Right.
the corporate parks you go to in other jurisdictions where it's just not that visible. Then after you just say, set aside 20 feet for an existing vegetation buffer around the perimeter, everything inside, they can just shuffle it around based on grading, based on parking, based on building. And given the size of the site, I bet that's workable to have that buffer, and that would take care of it all.
I'm okay with that.
That's,
Is the applicant,
So
is the applicant okay with that?
above, did you just say a 20-foot
Right.
buffer around the perimeter of the site?
Yeah.
Around Tyler Industrial, if you look at that picture, and you look at,
All the wood, yeah.
yeah, generally speaking, you look at a 20-foot, we've had language in the past about not necessarily existing vegetation, because sometimes that existing vegetation is kudzu, and so it's more just like retention of existing trees within that certain distance. The bigger the buffer, the more visually obstructing it is. We find about 20, if there's existing vegetation, we find 20 feet does it. If it's thin vegetation, 30 feet is better, but that's where we're at. And then, once again, we don't have to debate this at site plan about which trees go and which,
Right.
you can imagine that could be a long argument. We don't want to do that. You just leave the buffer and you move forward and you got all that flexibility. You got a whole sandbox inside.
Undisturbed?
Yeah.
Undisturbed?
That's ideally going to be the best way to do it, to make sure that council's concerns and staff's concerns are met about the existing vegetation.
So can you go back to the?
This isn't a site where you need high visibility in order to attract customers. They're not
Right.
doing drive-by service.
It's not drive-by traffic, but if I'm spending the money that these folks are going to spend, I probably would like for them to at least have some site window where they see the building, which they will, from Air Tool, in between the two Air Tool
Right.
driveways, because we'll have to grade that, and it'll be landscaped and it'll look nice. I don't believe that there's any issue from our end in holding that 20-foot buffer in the other places, Mark. It's just more or less a 20-foot undisturbed buffer.
Right.
Basically, this area,
I mean,
this will not be conserved.
it would be, the standard we have is that it's undisturbed and then any gaps would be planted. Right. That's the way we did it in Morgan Park South at the minor subdivision there.
And I think it's important to say to Mr. Christensen that I recognize the very important work that you're undertaking, and I appreciate that. And I know that it's an industrial park, and I also appreciate that. But I worry about a sea of asphalt. So, but thank you for what you're doing, honestly.
If I could just say, we have no issue with the buffer. In fact, we talked about that as part of this plan, having the view sort of obstructed and keeping as much natural vegetation around it as we can. And I think we even talked about it in one of the meetings I was in early on, that we understood we were going to have to screen the parking areas to some degree to make it more acceptable. So that is not at issue. I'll also just remind the council that what you're looking at this picture is, 5-ish acres of that larger 8.5, almost 9 acres.
Right.
So we're not bulldozing 9 acres and trying to make 9 acres a parking lot
And I
at
can't
all,
tell you how
right?
much I appreciate hearing that.
So we do appreciate that, and want to make this as smooth and easy as possible with what we talked about.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Yep, pleasure to do it.
And just for my clarity,
To see a parking lot, I mean, the parking is kind of bifurcated by the building and spaces. I mean, that's a couple hundred feet. I mean, that's a long step. I mean, so it's not a.
You're probably not going to
but it's
sell
not
it
a
to me
Walmart
as
parking lot.
bifurcated parking is probably not going to make a big sale with me, but I understand what you're saying, and I thank you. And it's not gnarly, thank you, yeah, all right. But,
But they are separated.
right, and those are, I'm sure that those little diagrams in the one above where you just were, I'm sure those are just concrete blocks. Those are not trees or anything lovely, yeah. Others to
Vehicle
be
use area
planted.
Landscaping island.
Okay, cool.
So it'll be a landscape parking lot like any, I mean, it's basically Class A office space,
Yeah.
just with a lot of people.
Yeah, all right, thank you. Thank you both.
Do you have more questions for council staff? Okay.
one other question for staff. So in other words, BJ, I think with what you were saying earlier, we don't have to worry about the TD, the traffic thing, okay? I'm sorry, forgive me. I learned a lot of, but these, I'm still trying to learn. But in other words, we don't have to worry about the traffic analysis because it's probably already done and been approved before they even got to this point. Am I right? Or you're not saying that?
Accounted for maybe, but.
Councilwoman Gray, I appreciate your question. Under normal circumstances for a PDP and for anything quasi judicial, we would want to have those data available and in the record. I absolutely agree with that. In the context of a corporate park where Amazon just went through, and there's been a lot of study of traffic in this area I do have firsthand awareness of. And secondly, that I'm also aware that prior to approval of a site plan if the trip generation indicates above a certain threshold that a TDA or TIA will need to be completed regardless of this outcome. Now, when it's done earlier, it can be factored into conditions, it can be factored into this, that, and the other thing, but it will need to be done. So I'm comfortable that needs to be done regardless. They won't get
Gotcha.
waived from that.
Gotcha.
And then when it comes to the buffer, it just comes down to a 20-foot, undisturbed buffer, some language about 20-foot buffer around the perimeter of the site that is either undisturbed or planted to achieve the buffer standard. And then after that, inside, yes, there's the vehicle use area perimeter landscaping, there's all the landscaping requirements, but we're not talking about necessarily planting that buffer. We're just talking about getting the assurance that the existing trees there will simply not be taken down.
So just so we're clear, the stormwater pond, because we're this far enough along with this thing, where it abuts Tyler Industrial, you can see there's
quite a bit of
proposed grading in there, which we're happy to vegetate per the buffer standards.
Yeah.
So we may not be able to, I guess all I'm saying is we may not be able to preserve every one of those trees in that 20 foot. We'll do
Yeah,
our
at
best.
that point.
And we may be able to slide it back a little bit. We'll look at it.
Yeah, at that point, it comes down to a judgment call from the council about, the buffer around this site. Is it going to be, it can be justified against the language. We checked the language in the CDP about buffering, and it can be justified to impose a 20-foot undisturbed buffer around the edge of this site. Another option is to simply require that by the time it's all graded and done, that the perimeter be planted to the 20-foot buffer standard in the UDO. Those are two different things. One, you're cutting down the trees that exist and then replanting them. Now, they are being replanted. The other is retaining the ones that are there, but it has more of an effect on their current grading plan. So it's a judgment call. I think we can justify it either way under the criteria for the PDP.
Ask potentially for a hybrid. If we disturb the buffer, we plant it to the buffer standards. If we don't disturb the buffer, we leave it as undisturbed.
Well, that hybrid is kind of already baked into the UDO because if it's required to be a buffer and you don't cut them down, you won't have to plant them and you'll save that money.
Okay.
So you'll get existing vegetation credits.
Something that you wanted to write, or you feel comfortable with the way that it's
Given the way that this has evolved, I don't think condition 1 as drafted right now is sufficient because it does say, as long as it doesn't interfere with essential site grading. Well, again, as shown right here on this map, to your point, the grading up by Tyler Industrial Court is in fact essential site grading. I think it could be much easier by simply saying, if you want to give us a recess, we'll come up with
we'll do
something.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, no,
But the intent is still to continue, right? Until there's a TIA or
But it
some.
sounds like we don't need one. The staff is comfortable with it will be required. And so it's an administrative, they'll see it. But it is a public hearing. What I would like to do is offer an opportunity for the public to speak.
Sure.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment? Please come forward. Just introduce yourself, name and address.
My name's Pete Mason. I'm at 170 Pine Barrens Vista, Southern Pines. And I've been in real estate and developing here for quite a while. And I'm not here about that. I'm here about the intersection at Fairway. But to me, this is a site that's not a desirable site. It's got 30 foot of fall. It's got a lot of things going on. And I would tell them thank you. Because, I mean, I'm just thinking, if I had this site and I had to do what they're gonna do with that 30 foot of fall, but that was just my thought.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none. Staff, would you still like some time?
A 5-minute recess would be great, just so that we don't feel too rushed and we can make sure to get it right. Because we want to be fair to the applicant and what their concerns are and cognizant of that. We want to get the right language just right.
Okay, I'm going to make it an 8-minute, so ignore that clock. It's going to be 5 minutes to 9. We will restart the meeting.
Within that 40 foot, came up with language to protect that area. We would just change it from 40 down to 20. That's our basically what it says. It's just a underbrush within buffers such as vines and small trees, less than 6 inch caliber, additional plantings, and then if you don't gaps, additional plantings necessary to meet DO within 4 inch approach that such an requirement will be removed through a recycling. So you fill in the gaps. Basically, one. Is not allowed to reflect the interior as long as you do make the use of the perimeter and shading in place. Six inch or 10. This one is 6 inch, right? Six. The town, the project code may remove underbrush. Wait. 6. This one's so right. Within the 40, within the 25 perimeter, project development.
Okay. We're just giving staff a few more minutes.
Let me clear, that's fine. Yeah. But what I'm here about is, so I need to retype this. So I'll read it up here. That's kind of crazy. Jacksonville watershed. Yes. No requirement. Not the great job. It says we recommend. During the day, when that school is, you got 2 schools.
How are you? All right, we're going to come back to the hearing because I think that staff has worked through a motion.
He's talking about his trip. All he's done is, he's just talking about his trip. There was this lion, this elephant, this crocodile.
All right, I will go ahead. I'm going to close the public hearing unless, is that okay for everyone? Okay. Okay, public hearing is closed. Staff, if you have updated motions or conditions that you would like to read through, that would be appreciated.
Out loud.
I'm sorry, I do need a second to look at findings of fact real quick, so pardon me. Okay, I'm ready.
I will say for anyone watching on YouTube or in the audience, those few minutes for you to look through the finding of the facts and making sure that the conditions and the motions are appropriate will probably save lots of time on your all's end in the future, so I appreciate you making sure it's done correctly the first time. All right, go for it.
Here's a motion for your consideration.
Okay.
I move to adopt attachment 1 of the staff report as findings of fact for PD 03-25 with an amendment to finding of fact number 1, where the bullet with finding of fact number 1 is removed and the
It's okay.
All right. Thank you for your patience. Give me a second. What we've got is we have findings of fact that validate the condition that was drafted by getting at the issue of, and it's still good, it's just that it then it goes on to specifically reference the condition that we're going to propose modifying based on conversation with the applicant. So.
Director Grieve,
Yeah.
would you prefer to have 2 weeks?
Not really, actually, we're good, and we just have more stuff behind it that it's going to stack up with.
Okay.
So we can, if you're patient enough to let us resolve it tonight, I think the issues that council has brought up and that have been agreed to very generously by the applicant, I think we can work it out. So,
Thank you.
But thank you for that very much. I move to adopt attachment 1 of the staff report as findings of fact for PD 03-25 with the following amendment. B1, the application demonstrates that it will achieve the purposes of the PD in this section. This includes a condition to optimize natural character preservation and minimize tree loss during development. The town council further finds that the existing natural tree cover on the site contributes to the town's natural character, and conditions of approval will maintain a buffer and require standard landscaping planting within the site.
Does that sound like it satisfies everyone's goal?
Read it one more time, please. Sorry, my bad. Let's see if you can do that again.
Yeah. The application demonstrates that it will achieve the purposes of the PD in this section. This includes a condition to optimize natural character preservation and minimize tree loss during development. The town council further finds that the existing natural tree cover on the site contributes to the town's natural character, and a condition of approval to retain a buffer as well as landscaping on site will achieve this natural character.
Do you want to retain a buffer and landscaping on site? You want to have retain be your verb, if you will? Retain a buffer and undertake landscaping on site, maybe? Or?
So I'm reverse engineering this in my mind because we're
Okay.
then going to get to approval of findings of fact that will validate a condition later. And the condition is to be read off from over here where we used a condition from a similar project elsewhere. Now, in order to do that, the condition is more specific, but basically it's the imposition of that condition that is therefore a finding of fact that is validating against the criteria for
Okay.
review. So that's why I'm saying they're going to provide a buffer around the outer edge.
But they're not going to retain landscaping, is my point. They're going to,
Okay, that retain existing vegetation, but they're going to also fill in gaps with
Right.
new landscaping. So
Right,
it's,
I
we don't
agree.
want to restrict it solely to existing vegetation, because there may be, do you remember the situation we had along Morganton where they saved 20 feet of existing vegetation, but it turned out that there was a gap in existing vegetation that was kind of long, and once everything behind 20 feet had been cut down, you had a big old gap.
right.
Well, what we want to do is make sure that not only is it we retain the 20 feet, but if there's a gap, that we plant it to the buffer standard, which
Right.
will still be cheaper than having to cut everything down and replant the entire thing as a buffer.
So can we retain the buffer and plant the landscaping?
Great.
Can we do that instead? Because we're not retaining landscaping because it doesn't exist yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we're coming.
So the application demonstrates that it will achieve the purposes of the PD and this section. This includes a condition to optimize natural character preservation and minimize tree loss during development. The town council further finds that the existing natural tree cover on the site contributes to the town's natural character, and the retention of a buffer, am I getting this right? And the-
So far, we're
and the
rocking.
retention of a buffer with additional landscaping
Thank you.
will further achieve this
Thank you.
character.
Beautiful, thank you. A+.
Thank you. So, and with that, the other findings of fact are still fine.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
And therefore, I move to approve the preliminary development plan for PD 0325 with the 2 conditions of approval. Condition number 1 being as follows, and then I'm going to read it.
Great.
Within a 20-foot buffer adjacent to Tyler Industrial Court and Air Tool Drive, the project developer shall retain all existing trees greater than or equal to 6-inch caliper, subject to the following. No grading shall occur within the buffer or within the critical root zone of buffer trees. The critical root zone is defined by the town arborist as a tree's respective drip line. Number 2, tree protection fencing shall be installed to protect the critical root zone of all retained trees within the buffer at a minimum distance of 6 feet or a tree's drip line, whichever is greater. The exact tree protection fence location shall be reviewed and approved during the site plan review. If the above required standoff distance directly prevents necessary site design, then the project developer may request a standoff reduction of tree protection fences. Any approved reduction is contingent on the assessment and concurrence from the town of Southern Pines arborist. The project developer may remove underbrush within the buffer, such as vines and small trees less than 6-inch caliper. Additional plantings necessary in order to meet UDO Exhibit 4-4 standards, such as required shrubs, will be reviewed and approved during site plan process. That's the additional planting.
Great.
Is there,
And then condition number 2 is the one as listed, allocate watershed exemption.
okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. You know what's going to happen is that staff is going to work on writing out all of those conditions, and then we'll have a written decision. Yes, and he's going to call you guys and be like, hey, you guys are good with this, right? So you're going to talk about it all between now and then.
Yeah, that'll come back to work session, the written decision. It'll have the conditions, it'll have everything worked out, and we'll make sure that it all makes sense. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Okay, our action item this evening, resolution number 1132, requesting NCDOT intersection review. There was an accident 2 weeks ago. There's been a lot of communication kind of behind the scenes with staff and NCDOT and council over the last week. Reagan, do you want to?
Really, I just, based upon conversations that you had with the district engineer and then our follow-up conversations, I simply drafted the resolution that you find in your packet. To the best of my knowledge, it meets what I think, what I believe DOT is looking for in order to initiate that study of the intersection. Certainly open to any amendments or thoughts council may have relative to whereases and therefores, but I think it's just a matter of they wanted some formal action from the town requesting that they take a look at the intersection, and that's what the resolution, I believe, accomplishes. So,
And Mr. Mace, you're here. Would you like to speak? I think you had originally called Councilman Goodman and mentioned this.
I live on the Bellmead side of Fairway, and my son and my new grandbaby live on the other side over there on Longway. And so, we're going back and forth, and then, and we've lived there 20 years, and so now with 2 schools there, in the morning and afternoon, they're 15 cars deep trying to get out. So, now you tend to use Oak Drive to try to get out, so you can pull out Oak Drive, take a right like you're going to Whispering Pines, but then you stop traffic behind you, and then you take a left on PD. But it's just getting to be very, there've been wrecks, there've been some people, fatalities, but, I just think that it needs to be addressed because it's just growing, and amazingly, 22 for over the past 10 years is just more people coming from Carthage into town and all, but I just, whatever y'all can do would be wonderful. I understand would be,
I would offer for your information, I probably should have maybe added it to the opening comments, but NC 22 in general, all the way up to Aviation Drive, back down to the new circle there on Midland, is being put forward in the STIP as an area for DOT to take a look at. So that entire corridor, which includes a number of problematic intersections. And specifically, there's already plans underway for DOT to do some preliminary engineering at the intersection of PD and 22, which of course starts to bring in Oak and some of those areas. So this obviously kind of plays into all of that with Fairway. And they expressed an interest in going ahead and studying it, so.
Yeah, John, it's an ideal area. I know a lot of people don't like traffic circles, but that would be an
I think
ideal
that's-
area.
I think that's probably what ends up there, but
But it would
we don't
make
know until we
It
know.
would make Oak more of a primary road drive than.
Potentially.
But that's just the way it's just laid out.
And in the meantime, the town, Mr. Albers will be taking a look at that intersection relative to any sight distance concerns that may be there. We're looking at a stop bar for the traffic sign because apparently there's been some issues with people running the traffic sign itself. And we're going to do what we can on Fairway, but once it intersects with Central Drive 22, that becomes a DOT issue.
When you come out of Fairway, coming from Bellmead 222, I don't know what where the highway setbacks are or the road setbacks are, but that corner has got a lot of vegetation.
Yeah.
And the other thing is there's a light there that was one of the old lights that goes out over the road. I mean, it's one of the real old lights. I think it could be lit up better and that vegetation cleaned out where, to whatever that property owner is.
Yeah.
And that would make a big, because you got to get right up to 22 before you can look left.
Yeah.
And, that's just my thought.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that you reached out to someone on the council with the issue and that we've had a chance to
I
look into it.
appreciate y'all
Yeah.
moving forward.
Yep.
Can I add something to this? At least the part that, I saw the email from Mr. Albers about things that the town could do. And one of the things that struck me as possibly something that would, low cost, but maybe heavy impact would be the lighted stop sign, like the red light around the stop sign, because I think that the issue that happened 2 weeks ago, the issue that happened a year ago where the student was killed, both were a result of running a stop sign. And so when I talked to Chief Cameron, his concern is not the sheer number of accidents there, but the intensity of them. So when there's an accident there, someone gets hurt. But what we don't know, and Mr. Mace reached out to me last week about this, and what we don't know is the number of near misses. No way to quantify that.
Yeah, so what happens is, and I just witness it, watch it, but you're 10 or 12 deep, and you're filing it up there. And you may change, you're gonna go left or right, but you're darting out when you should. Because, and then it's like when people see you pull it out, it's like they speed up. Right. And it's like, what in the world?
So maybe if the town could look at least the issues on Fairway, on both sides of Fairway, regarding either a stop bar, either the little slightly raised rumble strips that when you drive over it, it changes the sound. Like if you're distracted and you're not paying attention and then you hear that, and then the lighted stop sign, because the thing that Mr. Elmer sent didn't seem to be overly expensive. So that's something I feel like the town could probably do sooner than later versus what this resolution ultimately is going to try to solve.
I don't know who would be, if it would be y'all suggested to DOT or y'all have a meeting one day with DOT, but where Pine Needles, you cross 22 going from one hole to another, just back there, like those rumble strips there, or some kind of, because courteous people, if you see a golf cart, you'd stop and let them go across. But there's a lot of people that just, they don't even pay any attention.
It's a DOT road, but we can
that
mention it to them, yeah.
That's slowing them down before they get to that intersection.
That's right.
Even if it was a little, I don't know what DOT rules are, but even if it was 2 rumble strips and you drive your golf cart in front, but it would make people think a little more that that's.
So, I think we're probably going to adopt this resolution, but I mean, does the council have
How would this process work? Would Corey come to get to the council, or would you come to the council, like presenting kind of an idea? And then we'll just kind of get a report back?
Part of the challenge with the signs is he wants to make sure, a lot of those are solar powered, so you want to make sure that they actually can get some sunlight to get power.
Right.
Otherwise, it becomes a little bit more of a serious project. So they just need to go out and take a look at that intersection and what they can do. So.
So after I met with Ruben Blakely from the DOT, I provided a list to Manager Parsons, and you forwarded that on to staff on recommendations from DOT, what we can handle on Longleaf, just in the meantime. So
That's
yes,
something we're going to move forward on
Yes.
sooner than later. Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution, just asking that even after we do what we are able to on Longleaf, that we still request they look into the intersection?
I move to approve resolution number 1132, a request for NCDOT study of an intersection of Central Drive and Fairway Drive.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, before we adjourn, our next meeting is August 28th. It will be at the police station at 3 PM. I mean, October. I swear it says October. I read it as August. October 28th. There's an election November 4th, so just after that meeting, we have 3 wonderful candidates. Please remind all your neighbors to vote. The Veterans Parade is November 8th or 9th. I actually had it. It's the Saturday. And the most important thing is October 18th is Bill's birthday.
That's it.
All right.
That's it. That's a holiday.
I will make a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Saturday.
And all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Good, motion carries. Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all. Happy birthday.
I'm